Lin Yen's biological family found their real son, then sent him to prison for the fake heir's crime. Blackstone Island was no ordinary prison. 10,000 guards watched 100 hidden masters the world feared. For 15 years, Lin Yen had lived in poverty, while Lynch enjoyed his name, parents' money, and future. When Lynch caused a serious drunk driving accident overseas, Lin Yen's own mother chose which son would suffer. She told Lin Yen he was already used to hardship, then ordered him to serve 5 years in Lynch's place. Inside Blackstone, the masters discovered his nine-dragon pure yang body and decided to teach him everything they knew. 5 years later, Lin Yen had mastered medicine, martial arts, fortune reading, hidden weapons, technology, and far more. The family expected a broken ex-convict to come home obedient. Blackstone was sending back someone they could no longer control. On release day, 99 masters gathered to see Lin Yen off, treating their youngest disciple with unmistakable respect. The only teacher missing was the mysterious Pei Yuhan, a veiled woman powerful enough that even the others bowed to her. Blackstone's security itself showed how unusual the island was. Thousands of armed guards and snipers protected a place the outside world barely understood. The prisoners who mattered most were not ordinary criminals, but elderly figures whose names could shake industries, martial sects, and hidden circles. Some had reached the island because governments feared them, while others appeared to treat confinement as a strange retirement arrangement. Lin Yen entered as a sacrificed teenager with almost no control over his own future. 5 years later, those same legends stood in rows to watch him leave as their shared disciple. The change was visible in the way the old masters addressed him, no longer as a helpless newcomer, but as someone carrying pieces of all their legacies. His medical training ranged from conventional diagnosis to techniques that manipulated meridians, nerves, poison, and organ function with frightening accuracy. His martial training covered far more than strength. It included internal energy, hidden weapons, body control, and ways to conceal cultivation from other experts. Other masters taught him fortune reading, strategy, finance, technology, and skills that seemed unrelated until real life began demanding them one after another. The variety meant Lin Yen never thought of himself as a specialist. Blackstone had turned him into someone who could solve a medical problem, a street fight, a technical question, or a social trap with completely different tools. That was why the old masters were comfortable letting him return to a family that still believed prison had reduced him. They knew the opposite had happened. One teacher tried to mention the danger in Lin Yen's constitution before departure, suggesting the problem would not politely wait until he was settled at home. The fortune master stopped the warning because his own reading showed unusually strong romantic movement around Lin Yen that day. The comment sounded ridiculous beside an island prison, but the old men treated their strange arts with the same seriousness as martial cultivation. Lin Yen had learned not to dismiss predictions simply because they arrived wrapped in jokes. Pei Yuhan remained the one mystery. None of the other 99 masters explained to him. She wore the same bamboo hat and black veil whenever he saw her, and rarely offered more than silence. The respect shown by the other masters proved she was not merely another prisoner with an unusual personality. Whenever they entered her presence, even legends who argued loudly among themselves became careful. Lin Yen never learned why she stayed at Blackstone, what enemies she had, or why her strength seemed to sit beyond the island's normal hierarchy. What he did know was that she recognized the danger of his constitution long before he understood how severe it could become. More than once, when yang energy rose dangerously during training, a cool force reached him from somewhere nearby and restored balance. Lin Yen eventually understood that the hidden assistance came from Pei Yuhan. She never asked for gratitude and never explained the reason. That silent protection was why his final visit to her chamber mattered more than a ceremonial goodbye. He wanted at least one direct acknowledgement before leaving the island that had become his entire adult world. The stone room was quiet enough that the sudden roar inside his meridians felt even more violent. The 9 dragons were not literal creatures, but the movement of yang energy carried such force that the sensation resembled living things tearing through him. Every pulse of heat threatened the control he had built through 5 years of training. Before Lin Yen left, his medical teacher tried to warn him, but an old fortune master interrupted with a strange prediction. Lin Yen's romantic stars were blazing, the old man said, and that warning proved accurate almost immediately. Pei Yuhan had barely spoken to Lin Yen during 5 years, yet she had repeatedly stabilized his dangerous constitution in secret. His 9-dragon pure yang body generated overwhelming yang energy, and without enough yin energy, that power could destroy him. Whenever the dragons inside his meridians became unstable, Pei Yuhan's cold yin energy had been the one thing that calmed them. Lin Yen entered her stone chamber for a final goodbye, expecting another silent meeting before he returned to the mainland. Instead, heat exploded through his blood, and the nine yang dragons inside his meridians surged out of control at once. His skin burned red, his vision blurred, and violent energy tore through channels that felt ready to split apart. If he could not balance that yang immediately, he risked losing his cultivation or having his body rupture from within. The strongest yin source in the room was Pei Yuhan herself, and his failing body moved toward her before reason could stop it. For the first time in 5 years, she removed her bamboo hat and black veil, revealing a face Lin Yen had never seen. She was breathtakingly beautiful. But what mattered more in that moment was the pure yin energy surrounding her. Pei Yuhan could have thrown him away with a gesture, yet she did not, and the crisis ended only after their energies intertwined. When Lin Yen recovered his senses, embarrassment arrived together with one clear decision. He would not pretend nothing had happened. He took her hand and promised to accept responsibility, which earned him the coldest order he had ever heard from her. Pei Yuhan told him to leave, reach the martial emperor realm, and never reveal what had happened inside that room. She warned that if he spoke of it, she would personally kill him. But Lin Yen heard something else beneath the threat. He kissed her before leaving, testing the woman who could have ended his life in an instant and chose not to. That reckless confidence carried him even further, and by the time he finally walked out, their relationship was no longer simply master and disciple. Lin Yen promised that when they met again, he would be strong enough to stand beside her without calling her master. Behind him, Pei Yuhan whispered that nobody could save her, a quiet sentence Lin Yen stored away as a future problem. 3 hours later, he was aboard a luxury cruise ship heading toward Daxia, finally returning to the country that had forgotten him. The trip should have been peaceful, but screams from a VIP cabin pulled him away from the deck. Instantly, 2 young women were drugged and pinned down, while several foreign men prepared to assault them and record it. Lin Yen stepped between them without hesitation, and the first attacker answered by swinging a bottle at his head. One backhand sent the man through the cabin door and overboard, ending any doubt about what 5 years in Blackstone had produced. The others rushed him with knives and bottles, only for silver needles to pin them against the walls. Before they could close the distance, the last man pulled a gun and ordered Lin Yen to kneel, convinced that a firearm would finally restore control. Lin Yen calmly guessed that the weapon had no bullets, then opened his hand when the trigger produced nothing but empty clicks. Every round dropped from his palm to the floor. He had removed them before the gunman ever noticed. One punch ended the confrontation, but the drug coursing through the 2 women was becoming a more immediate danger. The older woman identified herself as Su Banksia, while her younger sister was Zi Xuan, both daughters of Jiang Bei's powerful Su family. Banksia initially mistook Lin Yen's treatment preparations for indecent and threatened him, despite barely being able to stand. Lin Yen explained that his blood-soaked shirt was interfering with treatment and that he intended to force the toxin out through their meridians. He started with Zixuan, channeling qi through her wrist, while the younger sister complained about how painful the process felt. Banksia demanded that he stop until Zixuan suddenly stood upright, fully alert and free of the drug's effects. That proof ended the argument, especially because Banksia's own nervous system was already approaching a dangerous threshold. She swallowed her pride, offered him her wrist, and within minutes Lin Yen purged the toxin from her as well. The VIP cabin after the fight looked like a demonstration of several Blackstone lessons used together. One attacker was gone through the broken door, several others were immobilized by needles, and the gunman had lost his weapon before realizing he was being disarmed. Lin Yen had not needed to kill anyone on the ship, because control mattered more than unnecessary force. Once the sisters were no longer in immediate danger, the silver needles pinning the attackers were placed to stop movement without damaging the organs beneath them. That precision impressed Banksia. Only after her own panic stopped interpreting every movement as another threat. The drug was the more complicated problem because waiting for ordinary shipboard medical help risked permanent nerve damage. Zixuan's weak resistance during treatment showed how frightened she remained even after the attackers were defeated. Lin Yen kept working anyway because the toxin was moving faster than her ability to understand what he was doing. As qi pushed through blocked meridians, pain came in short bursts, then faded with the returning sensation in her limbs. The moment Zixuan stood under her own power, gave Banksia a direct medical result rather than another explanation to doubt. Banksia's own symptoms had become more severe by then, leaving her little time to protect her pride. Lin Yen deliberately gave her the choice, instead of forcing treatment after the immediate assault had ended. She chose survival and let him take her wrist. The second detoxification was faster, because Lin Yen had already identified the poison's pattern from Zixuan. When Banksia recovered, she immediately returned to the controlled, businesslike personality that had been impossible while drugged. Xuan recovered differently, showing every bit of irritation she had been too weak to express during the rescue. That contrast between the sisters became obvious within minutes. Banksia handled embarrassment by becoming colder and more formal. Zixuan handled it by arguing with the man who had just saved her. Lin Yen's demand for payment was partly practical and partly a refusal to let powerful families treat his help as something automatically owed to them. The public debt threat worked because reputation mattered to the Su family far more than 1 million yuan. Banksia understood that calculation immediately, which was why she paid before the argument spread beyond the cabin. The card also became Lin Yen's first independent money after leaving Blackstone. He had returned from prison with immense skills, but no normal financial life, no salary, and no family support he could rely on. The payment therefore mattered, even though he could have used other methods to obtain far more later. Banksia's bodyguard offer came from watching the same stranger solve both the physical attack and the medical emergency without calling for help. Her AI project made the offer more serious because the sisters were not facing one isolated group of criminals. The model had attracted international attention, meaning repeated attempts were likely if they continued moving without stronger protection. Lin Yen's dismissal of the technology surprised Banksia because she had expected martial arrogance, not technical knowledge. When he described work beyond their current model, he did not provide enough details for her to verify it, but he spoke without the hesitation of someone bluffing about unfamiliar terminology. That contradiction made him more interesting rather than less believable. He had the hands of a martial artist, the diagnostic control of a doctor, and the confidence to criticize technology worth enormous amounts of money. Banksia was accustomed to people trying to impress her family. Lin Yen did the opposite by collecting the agreed payment and refusing a job many experts would have begged to receive. That refusal was why she chose to follow up rather than forget him after the ship docked. Once both sisters were safe, Lin Yen immediately asked for the payment they had promised during the emergency. Zixuan accused him of being shameless, so Lin Yen walked to the door and loudly announced that the famous Su daughters refused to pay debts. Banksia ended the scene before it became worse, handing him a bank card containing 1 million yuan. Lin Yen accepted it without embarrassment. In his mind, favors and debts were simple things that should be settled cleanly. Banksia then offered to hire him as a bodyguard because the sisters had developed a highly valuable artificial intelligence model. Their work was roughly 3 times stronger than current competing technology, making them targets for organizations around the world. Zixuan mocked the idea that an ex-convict would understand artificial intelligence, unaware that one of Lin Yen's masters was a pioneer in the field. Lin Yen knew enough to say that their celebrated model was impressive by ordinary standards, but nowhere near what his teacher had already built. He refused the bodyguard position anyway, because returning to the Lin family mattered more than taking another job on the same day. Banksia watched him leave with growing interest, while Lin Yen headed toward the dock and the people who had sacrificed him 5 years earlier. Waiting there were Lynch, the fake young master, and Lin Yen's eldest biological sister, Lin Wanu. Before approaching them, Lin Yen overheard a conversation they never expected him to hear. Lynch had promised to marry the Tang family's eldest daughter in exchange for investment money, then changed his mind after receiving the benefit. The Tang woman was rumored to be a disfigured widow with a child, so Lynch wanted Lin Yen to take his place as groom. Lin Wanu agreed easily, reasoning that an ex-convict from the countryside should be grateful that any wealthy woman would accept him. By the time Lin Yen reached them, both siblings had switched from contempt to warm smiles because they still needed his cooperation. Lynch greeted him like a loving brother and claimed he had fulfilled his old promise to arrange Lin Yen's future. He presented the Tang marriage as a generous reward, conveniently ignoring that he had never visited Blackstone once in 5 years. When Lin Yen mentioned that broken promise, Lynch's smile stalled and Lin Wanu immediately defended him. She said the prison was overseas and everyone was busy, then shoved the marriage contract at Lin Yen and ordered him to sign. Lin Yen read enough to understand the arrangement, tore the document apart, and said he was not interested. The refusal enraged Lin Wanu, but Lynch restrained her, already planning to let their parents pressure the real son later. Then Lin Wanu pointed at their car and told Lin Yen to ride home inside the trunk because the backseat was full. Lynch added that the trunk was spacious, presenting humiliation as another favor Lin Yen should appreciate. Lin Yen asked why Lynch did not ride there if it was so comfortable, and Lin Wanu called him an ungrateful convict. That was enough. 2 nearly invisible bursts of qi entered their bodies before either sibling understood that Lin Yen had attacked. One of his Blackstone teachers was known as the Murder Doctor a specialist in manipulating the human body with terrifying precision. Lin Wanu received the first lesson when violent intestinal distress struck her in the middle of the crowded dock. Her condition became so catastrophic that nearby travelers backed away while she continued trying to order Lin Yen into the trunk. Lynch received a subtler punishment, one designed to make him wonder when and how the real pain would begin. Lin Wanu's punishment at the dock was especially humiliating because she refused to stop acting superior even while her own body betrayed her. She kept telling Lin Yen he had no money, no status, and no right to refuse the trunk as travelers moved away from the smell around her. Lynch tried to preserve his image by standing beside her, which only placed him in the worst possible position when the scene became messier. Lin Yen did not explain the murder doctor's method aloud because the effect was almost impossible to trace back to a tiny burst of qi. To anyone watching, Lin Wanu simply suffered a sudden medical disaster at the exact moment she was insulting her brother. Lynch's punishment was deliberately delayed because Lin Yen wanted the fake heir to carry uncertainty away from the dock. The question about kidney stone pain sounded like a random joke until the technique activated inside both urinary tracts. That delay turned Lin Yen's final smile through the car window into a warning Lynch only understood after collapsing. Su Bangxia's arrival also reversed the social image the siblings were trying to impose. They had just ordered Lin Yen into a trunk because they believed no respectable person would care how he was treated. A powerful heiress then arrived in a luxury convoy and invited the same man into her own car. Lin Yen did not need to explain the contradiction. He simply accepted the better ride and let his siblings watch their assumption fail in public. Bangxia also gained another look at how complicated Lin Yen's family situation really was. On the cruise, he had appeared independent and almost casually capable. At the dock, she saw that the family waiting for him treated their returning son like unpaid labor rather than someone they had missed for 5 years. Her later decision to send gifts toward the Lin family carried more meaning because she now knew Lin Yen had little support there. The rare herbs among those gifts were particularly appropriate for someone whose medical ability she had personally experienced. The steward's insistence that nobody except Lin Yen receive them prevented the family from absorbing the gesture and redirecting credit to Lynch. That detail became essential once the banquet guests started assuming every new advantage belonged to the fake heir by default. At that perfect moment, a convoy of luxury cars arrived, and Su Bangxia stepped from the lead vehicle to offer Lin Yen a ride. Lin Yen accepted, leaving the siblings beside the car they had decided was too valuable to let him sit inside. Before driving away, he casually asked Lynch whether he knew how painful a kidney stone could be. Lynch had only enough time to look confused before the hidden technique completed its effect. Pain tore through both sides of his lower abdomen, dropping him to the pavement as 2 artificial blockages formed at once. Lin Yen watched through the rear window while Lynch curled on the ground, then turned his attention toward the family mansion ahead. Bangxia dropped him near the Lin estate, where a celebration banquet was already drawing wealthy guests from across Jiangbei. The first familiar face Lin Yen saw was not one of his relatives but Wang Ma, the longtime housekeeper who had once shown him genuine kindness. She was on the ground, with a swollen face and blood at her lips, while a richly dressed woman kicked her repeatedly. The attacker was Mei Yurong, wife of Su Long, chairman of Long Dragon Group and the underground figure called the Dragon Lord. Wang Ma had accidentally spilled tea on an expensive dress, and nobody at the banquet dared defend her against such a powerful guest. Mei Yurong raised a heel toward the housekeeper's face, but Lin Yen caught her leg before it could land. He ordered her to kneel and apologize to Wang Ma, and when she answered with outrage, his palm struck first. The slap shocked the surrounding guests because the Lin family's discarded ex-convict had just hit the Dragon Lord's wife in public. Several people urged Lin Yen to kneel before Su Long arrived, certain that the chairman would cripple or kill him. Su Long appeared moments later carrying 3 children, and Mei Yurong immediately demanded revenge. The Dragon Lord approached Lin Yen with no interest in explanations and gave him a brutal choice concerning his own eyes. Lin Yen ignored the threat and studied Su Long, then looked carefully at the 3 children traveling with him. Instead of begging, he leaned close and whispered one sentence that turned Su Long's fury into sudden suspicion. Lin Yen told the Dragon Lord that none of those 3 children were biologically his. Su Long rejected the claim at first, insisting that previous paternity tests had confirmed all 3. Lin Yen asked whether he had suffered a serious traffic accident when he was younger and temporarily lost sensation below the waist. That question froze him because the injury was a secret, known only to a handful of family members. Lin Yen explained that observation and traditional medicine revealed damage left by the accident even decades later. The injury had blocked the pathway needed for fertility while leaving most other physical functions apparently normal. In other words, Su Chonglong could live normally, but had been physically unable to father the children standing beside him. Su Chonglong's first denial came from more than wounded pride. He had already seen paperwork telling him the children were his, so Lin Yen was asking him to believe that a stranger's eyes were more reliable than laboratory reports. Lin Yen therefore did not waste time attacking the old test directly. He started with the secret injury, because it was information Mei Yurong had never needed to manipulate, and Su Chonglong knew it was real. The accident had damaged him when he was young enough that later doctors focused on whether he could walk and function normally. Once those visible problems improved, nobody around him questioned the possibility of hidden reproductive damage. Lin Yen read the remaining signs through posture, complexion, circulation, and subtle physical clues his medical teachers had trained him to combine. No single clue would have been enough. Together, they formed a diagnosis strong enough that he was willing to risk angering the Dragon Lord with it. Su Chonglong's confidence weakened because the secret accident created a medical explanation for a problem he had never known to investigate. That was why he ordered a fresh paternity test instead of attacking Lin Yen again. The waiting period was tense for everyone except Lin Yen. Mei Yurong tried to remain close enough to influence her husband, while Su Chonglong's own guards kept her away on his instructions. The three children remained part of the emotional pressure, even though they had done nothing wrong themselves. Lin Yen did not blame them for the deception surrounding their births. His conclusion was about biology and Mei Yurong's betrayal, not the value of children who had been raised inside a lie. When the new reports arrived, Su Chonglong checked them repeatedly before accepting what the numbers meant. The rage that followed was directed at the years stolen from him and the trust used against him. Mei Yurong cycled through denial, pleading, and moral arguments because the evidence no longer left room for a factual defense. Her claim that parenthood was more than blood might have meant something in an honest adoption. It meant something very different after repeated secret affairs and manipulated paternity results. The newly reported pregnancy destroyed even the possibility that the betrayal belonged only to the distant past. Su Chonglong's decision to remove her was immediate once that final fact arrived. Afterward, the dangerous aura around the Dragon Lord changed into exhaustion. Lin Yen recognized the expression because betrayal by family was one subject he understood without medical training. That shared experience shortened the distance between them, faster than status normally allowed. Su Chonglong heard that Lin Yen's parents had knowingly traded his freedom for Lynch's protection and reacted with disbelief rather than polite sympathy. The bluntness appealed to Lin Yen. Neither man needed to pretend their situations were dignified. Their sworn brother agreement therefore grew from a strange combination of medical trust, mutual betrayal, and compatible personalities. Lin Yen's offer to repair the infertility gave Su Chonglong a future immediately after destroying his understanding of the past. That timing mattered, because Su Chonglong needed something real to rebuild toward. Without it, the paternity truth would have left him only with loss. The treatment gave him something concrete to rebuild toward. Lin Yen used a needle technique that targeted the old obstruction rather than pretending to regenerate the entire injured area. The warmth Su Chonglong felt was the immediate proof that she had reached a place ordinary circulation had not properly served in years. Lin Yen did not promise certainty about another person's fertility or the exact timing of pregnancy. He said a healthy partner made conception likely within several months, now that the physical blockage was gone. The possibility of a son carried unusual weight because Su Chonglong's family line had passed through single sons for generations. That pressure explained why the future result would later affect him more deeply than any business contract. The Dragon Lord still wanted proof, so he ordered a trusted subordinate to arrange new testing through a source his wife could not influence. Half an hour later, the fresh reports returned, and the result was devastating. None of the three children matched him. Mei Yurong panicked as Su Chonglong confronted her, trying first to deny the evidence and then to argue that blood should not matter. That defense collapsed completely when another call arrived, announcing that she was currently pregnant again. Su Chonglong ordered her, and the children removed, unwilling to continue a marriage built on years of repeated deception. Once the rage faded, he turned back to Lin Yen with genuine gratitude for revealing a truth everyone around him had hidden. Learning Lin Yen's identity only made the situation stranger, because Su Chonglong already knew the story of the Lin family's imprisoned son. He could hardly believe parents would force their biological child to take the blame for a fake heir they had raised by mistake. The two men found common ground quickly, and Su Chonglong proposed that they become sworn brothers. Lin Yen accepted, gaining a powerful ally on the same afternoon he returned from Blackstone. Then he offered Su Chonglong something even more valuable than revenge, a way to repair the old injury causing his infertility. The Dragon Lord stared at him because Lin Yen had just described the damage as impossible for ordinary doctors to reverse. Lin Yen agreed with the ordinary part and reminded him that Blackstone had not trained an ordinary doctor. One silver needle, 2 precise acupuncture points, and a controlled surge of qi cleared the blockage that had remained for decades. Warmth spread through Su Chonglong's lower abdomen, convincing him immediately that something fundamental had changed. Lin Yen predicted that with a healthy partner, the Dragon Lord could receive good news within several months. For a man burdened by 3 generations of only sons, the possibility of finally having his own child meant more than money or status. Su Chonglong promised that if Lin Yen's treatment worked, his future son would recognize Lin Yen as godfather. With that alliance formed, Lin Yen finally entered the mansion to face the people whose blood he shared. Inside, Lin Yen's parents, Lin Fushing and Yang Yusa, were discussing him as though he were a problem someone else should solve. They assumed Lynch had successfully forced the Tang marriage onto him, and joked that a convict and a disfigured widow made an appropriate pair. Their laughter stopped when Lin Yen appeared alone, still wearing the clothes he had left prison in. Neither parent welcomed him home. Their first question was where Lynch and Lin Wanu had gone. Lin Yen answered that his sister was dealing with a severe stomach disaster, while Lynch was likely receiving treatment for kidney stones. The reaction was immediate panic. His parents prepared to rush out without once asking how their real son had survived 5 years in Blackstone. That contrast told Lin Yen more clearly than any speech which child they had chosen long ago. Before they could leave, Lynch himself stumbled into the mansion with a drainage bag attached after emergency treatment. He had refused full anesthesias because the banquet mattered too much, and he still intended to sign Long Dragon Group's promised deal. Pain and humiliation had done nothing to reduce his ambition. He glared at Lin Yen and quietly promised revenge. Lynch believed that once the contract was signed, his position inside Lin Group would become unshakable. He did not know the man behind that contract had just sworn brotherhood with the person he wanted to destroy. Lynch's return from the hospital showed how much the banquet mattered to his ambitions. The double blockage had required an invasive emergency procedure, and the pain was severe enough that most people would have stayed under observation. Lynch refused to miss the celebration because the Long Dragon Agreement was supposed to confirm him as Lin Group's future leader. He arrived exhausted, pale, and still carrying evidence of treatment beneath formal clothes. Even standing hurt, yet he forced himself upright whenever important guests looked his way. That obsession made his threat toward Lin Yen more revealing. Lynch did not simply resent the pain from the hidden technique. He feared that the biological son returning home might eventually reclaim the identity, inheritance, and authority Lynch had enjoyed for 15 years. The 10 billion yuan announcement seemed to erase that fear for a few minutes. As soon as the butler named the eldest young master, Lynch's confidence returned because everyone in the mansion had trained him to treat that title as his property. Lin Fushing and Yang Yusa reinforced the belief by celebrating before confirming the chairman's meaning. They had spent so long presenting Lynch as the family's future that the possibility of another eldest son barely entered their calculations. The Su family's redwood chests deepened the same mistake. Rare medicinal materials and jade pieces filled the room with a level of wealth far beyond ordinary gifts between acquaintances. Guests used the display as social proof and began flattering Lynch more aggressively because nobody wanted to miss a rising connection. That crowd behavior turned quickly against Lin Yen. People who knew nothing about his 5 years in prison repeated the family's judgment that he was an uneducated burden who should be grateful for shelter. Several encouraged him to kneel, simply because agreeing with the hosts seemed safer than questioning them. Lin Yen's decision not to argue preserved the impact of Su Chonglong's entrance. If he had explained the relationships himself, the family could have dismissed it as another boast. Hearing the Dragon Lord name Lin Yen personally removed that option. The slap also forced Lynch to experience the reversal physically in front of the same guests whose approval he wanted most. When Su Chonglong called him a fake young master, the insult attacked the exact identity Lynch had been defending since Lin Yen returned. The Su steward's correction moments later made the point, independently from another powerful source. 2 unrelated organizations had arrived for Lin Yen, while his own parents were still treating him as unwanted. That contrast was why Lin Yen walked out, instead of staying to enjoy their confusion. He did not need a late welcome generated by money and outside approval. What he had wanted 5 years earlier was a family willing to choose him before knowing what he could offer. The banquet proved that nothing fundamental had changed inside the Lin household. The banquet soon erupted with news that Long Dragon Group had increased its cooperation offer dramatically. The new figure was 10 billion yuan, and the chairman had specifically asked to work with the Lin family's eldest young master. Lin Fushing nearly lost control of himself with excitement, while Yang Yusa immediately praised Lynch as the family's lucky star. Lynch straightened despite the pain and accepted every congratulation, certain that the title could only refer to him. Then another group of messengers entered carrying redwood chests from the far more powerful Su family. Inside were valuable jade pieces and rare medicinal herbs, gifts worth enough to transform an ordinary family's fortune. The steward said Miss Su had sent them because a dragon had emerged from the Lin family. Once again, everyone assumed that dragon was Lynch, and the room rushed to flatter the fake heir. Guests who barely knew the family began insulting Lin Yen, demanding that he kneel, apologize to his parents, and accept his place. Lin Fushing joined them, ordering his biological son to kneel or leave the family entirely. Yang Yusa called him ungrateful, while praising Lynch for bringing wealth and influence to their home. Lin Yen simply watched. He knew both major honors in the room had been created by relationships Lynch did not possess. The butler suddenly announced that Su Chonglong had arrived in person, and every important guest rushed toward the entrance. Lin Fushing bowed deeply and welcomed the Dragon Lord, as though royalty had crossed his threshold. Yang Yusa eagerly asked whether he had come to finalize the deal with Lynch. Lynch introduced himself as the Lin family's most outstanding young master and waited for recognition. Su Chonglong answered with a slap powerful enough to send him spinning across the floor. The motion tore loose his medical bag, spraying blood-tainted fluid and turning the elegant banquet into instant chaos. Su Chonglong seized Lynch by the collar and called him a fake young master with no right to stand in Lin Yen's place. Then he addressed the room clearly. Long Dragon Group's 10 billion yuan cooperation was for Lin Yen and nobody else. Until Lin Yen personally signed, the contract would wait, and Su Chonglong had no interest in negotiating with the rest of the family. He left after that declaration, dropping a silence over everyone who had spent the previous minutes mocking the real heir. Lynch recovered enough to argue that the Su family's gifts still proved he was the one favored by greater powers. His parents clung to that possibility immediately because admitting the truth about Lin Yen would mean admitting how badly they had misjudged him. The Su steward then asked to be shown to the eldest young master's room so additional gifts could be delivered there. Lynch stepped forward and claimed the title, only for the steward to ask whether his name was Lin Yen. When Lynch corrected him, the steward's expression chilled, and he repeated Miss Su's instruction with absolute precision. Every gift belonged to Lin Yen alone. Nobody else was authorized to receive them. The second reversal broke the last excuse available to the Lin family. Lin Yen walked forward, accepted the gift list, and asked the steward to thank Su Bangxia for remembering him. Then he left the mansion without waiting for apologies that would have meant nothing after 5 years of silence. Behind him, arguments erupted as his parents and Lynch tried to understand how the discarded prisoner had attracted both powerful allies. Lin Yen barely made it beyond the estate before another problem drowned out the family drama. His blood heated violently, and the 9 yang dragons inside his meridians surged more fiercely than they had inside Pei Yuhan's chamber. The attack was worse this time, as if the brief balance he received earlier had only postponed a larger eruption. His skin reddened, veins stood out along his neck and forehead, and darkness gathered at the edges of his vision. Without a strong source of pure yin energy, he had only minutes before his constitution injured him beyond recovery. Then he sensed something cold and extraordinarily pure coming from the east. The yin energy was stronger than anything he had encountered outside Blackstone, and his body responded to it immediately. Lin Yen ran toward the signal, forcing himself forward while every step felt like heated blades moving through his organs. The trail ended at a luxury hotel where guests backed away from the red-skinned, bloodshot man approaching the entrance. Before he could enter, a tiny voice cut through the pain and stopped him. A little girl knelt in front of passing men, begging each stranger to marry her mother. Most ignored her. One shoved her away and insulted the woman's appearance before walking off. The child's knees hit the stone, but she rose again and repeated the same desperate request to the next person. Her name was Tong Shaolin, and the mother she was trying to save was Tong Shudin. That name caught Lin Yen immediately because it was the same woman Lynch had promised to marry and then abandoned. Several wealthy boys came running from the hotel and started mocking Xiaolan for having no father. They threw small stones at her while laughing about the tumor on her mother's face and the rumors surrounding her birth. Xiaolan curled her arms over her head but refused to agree with them, shouting that her father was a hero. The boys laughed harder and demanded to know why she had to beg strangers if such a father really existed. Their leader picked up half a brick and raised it above the little girl's head. Lin Yen caught his wrist before the brick could fall and slapped him hard enough to throw him to the ground. The boy tried to hide behind his father's status, so Lin Yen answered with a second slap and a direct lesson about bullying children smaller than him. The rest of the group fled back into the hotel, dragging their suddenly humbled leader with them. Lin Yen turned toward Xiaolin, softened his voice, and asked whether she was hurt. Instead of answering, the child dropped to her knees again and begged him to marry her mother. Between sobs, she explained the crisis inside the hotel as best a child could. Tang Shudin had been named heir by the old patriarch, making her shares and position a threat to ambitious relatives. After the patriarch died, several branches of the family began pressuring her to surrender what he had left her. A husband would give Shudin political and legal protection inside the clan, which was why today's engagement mattered. The Lin family had promised to send its eldest son, then abandoned the ceremony entirely. Now Tang relatives were using that humiliation as proof that Shudin was unfit to remain in the family. If no groom appeared, she and Xiaolin could lose their home, their shares, and what little protection they still possessed. So Xiaolin had run outside and started asking strangers for the one thing she believed could save her mother. Lin Yen looked at her scraped knees, torn dignity, and refusal to stop trying, and saw a painful reflection of his own childhood. He had once been the abandoned child nobody protected, living far from the family that should have wanted him. That memory made the decision easier than the impossible coincidence should have allowed. The woman producing the yin energy his body desperately needed was also the woman his family had tried to force him to marry. Xiaolin had asked countless strangers for help, and Lin Yen became the first one who did not walk away. He carried the injured girl into the hotel while his own meridians still burned with unstable yang energy. Inside the ballroom, several hundred guests had gathered around what looked less like an engagement and more like a public humiliation ceremony. Tang Shudin stood alone on stage in a white dress with a veil hiding the damaged side of her face. Guests openly mocked her appearance, her supposed dead husband, and the child everyone believed she had outside marriage. At the center of the attack was Tang Jiangwo, her granduncle and one of the men positioned to benefit if she lost her inheritance. With a microphone in hand, he announced that the Lin groom had failed to appear and blamed Shudin for disgracing the family. His speech pretended to be regretful, but every word pushed the room toward the conclusion he wanted. Down among the guests, Shudin's mother, Li Xinru, shook with anger while her husband Hiren remained silent. When she tried to object, Hiren pulled her back, afraid that challenging the clan would leave their entire branch with nothing. Minutes passed without a groom, and Tang Jiangwo's false concern gradually turned into satisfaction. Other relatives demanded that Shudin hand over her shares and leave before she embarrassed the family further. Shudin searched the room for support, but even her parents could not meet her eyes when the pressure reached its peak. The last hope left her expression as she prepared to accept expulsion rather than endure more public abuse. Then Lin Yen's voice crossed the ballroom and stopped the proceeding. He asked who had decided nobody would marry her. Every head turned toward the entrance, where Lin Yen stood in prison clothes with red skin, bloodshot eyes, and Xiaolin clinging to him. Tang Jiangwo demanded his identity, and Lin Yen gave it plainly. He was the Lin family's true eldest son. The room erupted because the groom everyone had written off had appeared at the exact moment Shudin was about to be cast out. More importantly to Lin Yen, the instant he entered, the violent dragons inside him began to settle. The pure yin energy filling the hotel was coming from Tang Shudin, confirming that his body had led him to the right person. Xiaolin ran to her mother and proudly announced that she had found a man who wanted to marry her. Shudin saw the blood on the girl's knees and bruises on her arms, then looked at Lin Yen with fear and fragile hope. When she asked whether he truly intended to marry her, Lin Yen introduced himself as her future husband without hesitation. Tang Jiangwo's faction immediately tried to break that decision before it became irreversible. Tang Haili, Shudin's uncle, whispered with his son Tang Yun and sent the younger man to attack her reputation publicly. Tang Yun praised Lin Yen sarcastically for accepting a cursed widow with a child and a monstrous face. Tang Haili then pretended to be considerate, warning that Lin Yen might not understand how severe Shudin's condition really was. They offered him a graceful escape, confident that one look behind the veil would make him run. Xiaolin rushed to Lin Yen in tears and begged him not to leave because her mother had not always looked that way. Lin Yen patted her head and promised he was staying. He then admitted that he had not seen Shudin's face and asked her to come backstage so he could examine it properly. The Tang conspirators smiled, believing they had finally pushed him into the exact trap they wanted. Backstage, the yin energy around Shudin's became so dense that Lin Yen's dangerous constitution quieted even further. He asked her to remove the veil, and Shudin trembled for a long moment before lifting it. A fist-sized purple growth covered much of the right side of her face, twisted enough to explain why ordinary people reacted with fear. Yet the unaffected half revealed clear features and flawless skin, making it obvious to Lin Yen that the problem was medical, not ugliness. Shudin closed her eyes and quietly told him he could cancel the marriage if the sight disgusted him. Several seconds passed, and when she opened her eyes again, Lin Yen was still standing exactly where he had been. He told her he had no intention of canceling and called her beautiful. The compliment hurt almost as much as it comforted her, because nobody had spoken to her that way since the growth appeared. Lin Yen then gave her something far more important than reassurance. He said the condition could be cured. Shudin warned him that famous hospitals and specialists had already failed even to identify what was happening to her face. Lin Yen recognized it as abnormal flesh growth produced by an extremely rare poison that had fused deeply with her blood and marrow. Conventional treatment could not solve it, but Blackstone had given him teachers who specialized in exactly that border between medicine and poison. He asked for her wrist and began checking her condition before attempting anything dangerous. The pulse told him something unexpected that immediately contradicted one of the Tang family's central accusations. Shudin had never been intimate with a man. When Lin Yen carefully revealed what he had discovered, she withdrew her hand and finally told him the truth about Xiaolan. The little girl was not her biological daughter. She was the only child of Shudin's older brother. Before dying in a conflict with powerful enemies, her brother entrusted Xiaolan to Shudin and made her promise to protect the child. Because those enemies continued searching for the girl, Shudin invented a marriage and claimed Xiaolan as her own daughter. That lie destroyed her reputation, but gave the child a safer identity. Later, assassins attacked again, and Shudin took a poisoned weapon meant for Xiaolan. The injury created the terrifying growth that had consumed her face and isolated her for years. Lin Yen listened in silence as every ugly rumor transformed into evidence of how much Shudin had sacrificed for one child. She had accepted disgrace, loneliness, and physical suffering, because keeping Xiaolan alive mattered more than being believed. That was enough for Lin Yen. He ordered her to sit still and decided the condition would end that day. The backstage lighting made Shudin's condition look even harsher, because there was no veil, distance, or crowd noise to soften it. The abnormal tissue rose from her cheek in dark purple and blue layers, with twisted surface patterns that made the growth seem almost alive. A person focused only on the deformity could easily miss the symmetry and fine structure still visible on the unaffected side of her face. Lin Yen looked at the whole patient instead of the most shocking symptom. Her complexion outside the poisoned area remained healthy. Her breathing was stable, and her pulse carried far more vitality than someone dying from ordinary cancer. Those clues supported the poison diagnosis, but before he ever reached for a needle. Shudin had grown used to people seeing the tumor first and the person second. That history explained why a few seconds of Lin Yen's silence felt like a verdict to her. She expected disgust because every previous encounter had taught her to prepare for it before anyone spoke. Lin Yen's refusal to cancel mattered because it happened after seeing the truth, not because he was still protected by a veil. When he called her beautiful, Shudin assumed kindness before she considered honesty. She had spent too many years hearing insults to accept the opposite judgment quickly. The claim that he could cure her was even harder to believe. She listed famous hospitals and specialists because those failures had become the evidence supporting her hopelessness. Some doctors had tried ordinary tumor treatment, others had suggested folk methods, and none had removed the source without risking greater damage. Lin Yen recognized why they failed. The growth was only the visible endpoint of a poison that had entered far deeper systems after Shudin took the attack meant for Xiaolan. Cutting away the cheek alone would leave the toxic influence inside her blood and marrow. Any cure had to draw out the underlying contamination while protecting nerves, circulation, and bone around the face. That was exactly the kind of integrated problem Blackstone training had prepared him to solve. His pulse examination began as medical confirmation, not curiosity about her personal history. The result surprised him because it exposed a contradiction that changed how he understood every rumor outside. Shudin's body showed no sign that she had ever given birth or been physically intimate in the way the clan claimed. Her reaction to the discovery was not embarrassment alone. It was fear that explaining the truth could endanger Xiaolan by reopening the identity she had hidden for years. Only after Lin Yen had already chosen to protect the child did Shudin risk telling him why the public story was false. Her older brother's enemies were powerful enough that even after his death, his daughter remained a target. Claiming Shaolin as her own changed the trail those enemies had to follow and allowed Shuden to control who knew the child's real background. The fake marriage story gave outsiders a simple explanation for a child suddenly appearing under her care. Shuden accepted being called immoral because correcting the rumor could expose Xiaolan to people searching for her. The poison attack proved the threat was not theoretical. When assassins finally found them, Shuden put her own face and body between the weapon and the little girl. The resulting deformity was therefore the visible cost of a promise she had kept to her dying brother. Lin Yen's attitude hardened after hearing that history, because the Tang family's insults now sounded even uglier. They were exploiting a sacrifice without understanding it and trying to strip inheritance from the person carrying the burden. The Ghostgate 13 needles required far more precision than ordinary acupuncture. Each point controlled a different route for blood, qi, poison, pain, or tissue response, and the sequence mattered as much as placement. A single wrong angle around the face could damage an eye, nerve, or artery. Lin Yen's hand remained steady because his teachers had forced him to practice under far harsher conditions on Blackstone. The first few needles stopped the poison from spreading deeper, while later points began driving it back toward the visible growth. Shuden felt sharp pain, but also a cooling sensation where years of pressure had made the cheek constantly heavy. The tumor's movement was the poison reacting to a path it could no longer escape. When yin energy surged through the seventh point, Lin Yen learned something new about Shuden's body as well. Her natural yin was not merely strong enough to calm him from a distance. Under direct meridian contact, it could suppress the 9 yang dragons almost immediately. That discovery connected his survival problem to the woman he had already chosen to protect for completely separate reasons. Lin Yen did not stop treatment to analyze the coincidence because Shuden still had 6 needles remaining. He completed the formation first, forcing the contaminated material outward until the growth lost its structure. The black discharge carried the poison with it, instead of leaving a hidden root beneath healthy tissue. That was why the skin underneath appeared intact, rather than scarred or partially removed. Shuden's first look in the mirror was cautious, rather than joyful. She touched the cheek once, pulled her hand away, then touched it again as if expecting the old mask to reappear. Only after feeling smooth skin repeatedly did the reality reach her. Her collapse into tears was not simply about beauty. The cure removed a daily physical reminder of the attack, a social mark used to humiliate her, and the excuse relatives used to treat her as less than human. For 3 years, mirrors had confirmed the worst day of her life every time she looked up. Now the same mirror showed no trace of it. Lin Yen let that emotional release happen, without interrupting it with another explanation. When Shuden hugged him, he did not treat gratitude as consent to anything beyond comfort. He waited until she could speak normally, before asking whether she still wanted the marriage. That question protected the choice from becoming another debt. Shuden had asked for a husband while desperate, before knowing her face could be restored. Lin Yen wanted the answer from the woman who now had options again. Her decision to take his hand, therefore, carried more weight than the emergency promise in the ballroom. 13 silver needles appeared in his hand, part of the Ghostgate 13 needles technique taught through Blackstone's greatest medical masters. The method could heal when used correctly and kill, without obvious trace when used for darker purposes. Lin Yen placed the first needles around the poisoned tissue, locking the abnormal energy into a controlled area. Each insertion made the growth writhe, as the poison resisted being forced from Shuden's blood. By the 7th needle, a surge of pure yin energy moved through the treatment and entered Lin Yen's own body. The 9 yang dragons retreated instantly, finally calming enough that his life was no longer in immediate danger. Lin Yen continued without pausing, placing all 13 needles and channeling qi through the complete formation. The growth visibly shrank, collapsed, and released black contaminated fluid from tissue that had tormented Shuden for years. When Lin Yen removed the final needle and cleaned her cheek, smooth, unscarred skin appeared beneath it. For the first time, Shuden's entire face was visible, and the woman hidden behind the disease was strikingly beautiful. Lin Yen directed her toward a mirror because words would not make the result feel real. She touched the restored cheek with trembling fingers, checked it again, and finally broke into uncontrollable tears. Years of humiliation and hopelessness left her all at once as she sank to the floor in front of her own reflection. Then she rushed back to Lin Yen, hugged him tightly, and repeated her thanks until she could barely speak. He let her cry until the relief settled, then reminded her that the cure changed the choice in front of them. With her face restored, Shuden no longer needed to marry a broke ex-convict, simply because he was the only man available. She could choose someone rich, powerful, famous, or connected if she wanted. Shuden answered almost immediately by taking Lin Yen's hand and weaving her fingers through his. She told him that he was her husband and that she had no intention of choosing anyone else. Lin Yen returned the grip with a genuine smile and led her toward the ballroom where the people waiting to celebrate her rejection still had no idea what had changed. While Lin Yen treated her backstage, Tang Jiangwo's faction spent the wait convincing themselves that the groom had already escaped. Tang Haili mocked Shuden loudly over the microphone, telling the room that no man would remain after seeing her face. Tang Yun joined the ridicule, and several guests laughed because humiliation had become the banquet's main entertainment. Only Xiaolan refused to believe it, insisting that Lin Yen had promised to stay and would keep his word. Then the backstage door opened, and Lin Yen walked out still holding Shuden's hand. The laughter weakened immediately because the supposedly terrified convict had returned instead of disappearing. Tang Haili recovered first and invited Lin Yen to announce the cancellation publicly so everyone could witness it. Tang Jiangwo supported the suggestion, pretending the family would understand if the young man wanted to reconsider. They believed every possible path now led to Shuden losing her position. Lin Yen agreed that he had an announcement, turned toward Shuden, and dropped to one knee. Instead of an expensive ring, he held a rough band woven from foxtail grass he had picked on the way inside. It was crooked, simple, and worth almost nothing, but Lin Yen offered it with complete seriousness. He asked Tang Shuden to marry him. The room stopped moving as the woman they had spent, calling unwanted, stared down at the man choosing her publicly. Shuden answered yes without hesitation, tears gathering again as Lin Yen slid the grass ring onto her finger. Xiaolan burst into applause and shouted that Lin Yen had kept his promise. Li Qinru cried openly, while Hiren finally looked up from the silence he had hidden behind all afternoon. At the main table, Tang Jiangwo, Tang Haili, and Tang Yun realized the proposal had wrecked months of careful pressure. A recognized husband strengthened Shuden's claim and made it far harder to strip her inheritance under the excuse that she stood alone. The foxtail ring also carried an accidental message the Tang family did not understand until much later. Lin Yen had access to valuable gifts from the Su family and a 10 billion yuan offer from Long Dragon Group. Yet he proposed with something found by the roadside. The choice made it impossible to argue that the proposal itself was a performance built around wealth. Shuden accepted the grass as though it were jewelry, because the value came from being chosen in front of the same crowd that expected her rejection. The legal and political consequence landed quickly among relatives who understood family shares better than romance. Tang Jiangwo's faction had built the event around proving Shuden could not form a household capable of defending her position. Lin Yen's public proposal destroyed that claim before they could announce it formally. That was why Tang Haili immediately shifted from appearance to money. If fear could not make Lin Yen run, perhaps cash could make him sell the commitment voluntarily. Lin Yen's refusal created a second problem for them because a poor man who would not take money was harder to predict. The veil challenge was their attempt to restore the old social weapon in front of witnesses. They wanted hundreds of people laughing at Shuden again so Lin Yen would feel pressure even if he personally tolerated the deformity. Instead, the removed veil converted the same crowd into evidence that the disease was gone. Several people who had mocked her moments earlier could barely stop staring. The reversal did more than embarrass Tang Jiangwo. It removed the visual condition he had cited publicly as proof that Shuden was unsuitable for marriage and leadership. His immediate expulsion order therefore sounded harsher because everyone had watched his stated reasons disappear one by one. Shuden still prepared to leave because years inside the clan had taught her that being right did not mean having power. Lin Yen's slap changed that calculation. It was the first time someone on her side answered Tang Haili without first asking whether the clan would approve. Xiaolan's request to call him daddy came after watching that action, not simply after hearing a marriage proposal. To the child, a father was becoming defined as the adult who arrived, protected mommy, and kept promises when other people became frightening. Lin Yen understood the responsibility hidden inside the title even if he answered lightly. The bodyguard attack then tested whether the promise had practical weight. The men were trained enough to intimidate ordinary guests and carried weapons designed to end resistance quickly. Lin Yen's 3-second estimate was not empty confidence. He had already read their spacing, posture, dominant hands, and the direction each would move once he entered the circle. The first 2 strikes created gaps in the formation. The next movements used those gaps to keep multiple attackers from surrounding him at the same time. Because he was overwhelmingly stronger, he could end each engagement with a single controlled hit instead of turning the ballroom into a lethal scene. None of the guards required a repeated attack once they were down. That efficiency mattered to Shuden because the display looked less like uncontrolled rage and more like certainty. Lin Yen could be violent, but he was not losing himself in the violence. He stopped the exact moment the threat stopped. That distinction later complicated Li Xinru's attempt to describe him as a man who would inevitably hurt his wife. Hiren also noticed it, even though he remained too timid to defend Lin Yen openly. The father had watched enough conflict to understand that a man capable of dropping 30 guards could have done much worse, if cruelty were the goal. The walk out of the ballroom created a new family structure before any certificate existed. Xiaolan rode in Lin Yen's arm as his daughter. Shuiden held his hand as his wife, and neither's Ishinten depended on Tang Jiangwo's permission. That was the real defeat the patriarch could not reverse by shouting another rule. Tang highly whispered that Lin Yen had to be chasing money and decided to buy him off before the situation became permanent. He approached with false concern and offered cash, food, and a graceful exit from a marriage he claimed would only become trouble. Tang Yun added that Shuidin would soon lose her shares anyway, so there was no fortune worth marrying into. Lin Yen told them money had nothing to do with his decision. They laughed because they assumed any man who had seen Shuidin's damaged face could only be lying. Lin Yen answered that seeing her face was exactly why he wanted to marry her, and thanked them for giving him such a beautiful wife. That statement triggered another wave of mockery from people who had not seen what happened backstage. Tang Jiangwo finally challenged him to remove the veil and let the entire room judge whether his eyesight worked. Lin Yen accepted, looked at Shuidin for permission, and gave her a small reassuring nod. Then he lifted the white fabric from her face beneath the ballroom lights. Every laugh died at once. The tumor was gone, leaving flawless skin and a face so transformed that several guests initially struggled to believe she was Tang Shuidin. People stood from their chairs, craned over tables, and demanded to know where the growth had gone. Tang Haili shot upright with the color draining from his face, while Tang Yun simply stared with his mouth open. Tang Jiangwo gripped his chair as he realized the condition he had used for years as a weapon no longer existed. Xiaolan ran onto the stage, hugged Shuidin, and celebrated that her mother was finally healed. For the first time in years, Shuidin stood in front of the clan without hiding any part of herself. She asked her granduncle what justification remained for expelling her, now that she had a husband and her illness was gone. Tang Jiangwo had no legitimate answer, so he abandoned logic and leaned entirely on authority. He accused her of violating family rules, repeated the old claims about her child and supposed dead husband, and announced her expulsion anyway. The guests could see the decision for what it was, but challenging the Tang patriarch carried costs most of them would not accept. Xiaolan tugged Lin Yen's hand and quietly asked whether he could teach the old man a lesson for always bullying her mother. Shuidin immediately pulled the child back, afraid Lin Yen had already risked too much for people he barely knew. She took Xiaolan's hand and prepared to leave, rather than drag him into a larger clan war. A violent slap cracked through the ballroom before she made it 2 steps. Tang Haili flew sideways and hit the floor with blood at his mouth, while Lin Yen remained standing where the strike began. The room froze because nobody expected the ex-convict to answer a family expulsion with open force. Tang Haili clutched his face and demanded to know how Lin Yen dared hit a Tang elder. Lin Yen did not bother debating the title. He had watched that elder help torment a woman and child for money. Then he looked down at Xiaolan and asked whether she felt better. The child nodded brightly, delighted that someone had finally answered the bullying, instead of asking her mother to endure it. She hesitated for a moment before asking Lin Yen one far more personal question. Could she call him daddy? The request hit him harder than the insults in the room, because Xiaolan had spent years being mocked as a fatherless child. Lin Yen touched her nose gently and told her she could. Xiaolan burst into tears, then turned toward the entire ballroom and announced that she finally had a father. Shuidin looked away to hide her own tears, but the emotional moment ended when Tang Jiangwo slammed the table in fury. He ordered the family's guards to seize Lin Yen. More than 30 bodyguards flooded through the side doors, carrying electric batons, and formed a ring around the new family. Shuidin immediately pulled Xiaolan behind her, frightened by the number of men closing in. Lin Yen took her cold hand, smiled, and told her to give him 3 seconds. Before she could ask what he meant, he moved. The first second dropped the nearest guards with 2 compact strikes that launched them into tables. During the second, Lin Yen moved through the formation faster than most guests could follow, wasting no motion on anyone already falling. By the end of the 3rd second, every guard was on the floor, and Lin Yen's clothes were barely disturbed. The wreckage left the ballroom silent enough for the groans of injured men to sound unnaturally loud. Tang Yun's legs failed beneath him. Tang Haili shook with his swollen face in both hands, and Tang Jiangwo stared gray-faced from his chair. For the first time, the conspirators understood that Lin Yen was not simply reckless. They had no physical way to stop him. Xiaolan clapped as though she had just watched her favorite hero win a movie fight. Shudin cried again. But this time the tears came from discovering what protection actually felt like. Lin Yen returned to her, wiped the tears from her cheek, and promised that nobody would touch her or Xiaolan again. When she thanked him, he told her to stop, because protecting his wife and daughter was not a favor. Lin Yen had already decided they were family, with or without Tang approval. That word broke through years of Tang clan betrayal more effectively than any display of martial strength. Lin Yen lifted Xiaolan with one arm, took Shuedin's hand with the other, and walked toward the exit. At the door, he warned the room that anyone who harmed his wife or daughter would answer to him directly. Nobody tried to stop them. After the new family left, the guests quickly abandoned the ruined ballroom, leaving Tang Jiangwo's faction among broken tables and defeated guards. The humiliation had failed. The marriage had succeeded. Shudin's face was restored, and the family's enforcers had been crushed in seconds. Tang Yun tried to salvage hope by arguing that beauty itself could eventually separate Shudin from a poor convict. Now that she was one of the most attractive women in Jiangbei, he assumed richer men would become interested, and the rushed marriage would collapse. Tang Haili added another angle by summoning Shudin's parents and pretending to congratulate them. He told Li Xinru that if they had known their daughter's face would heal, they would never have allowed her to marry a criminal. A woman that beautiful, he suggested, deserved a billionaire or a politically connected husband instead. He also warned that Lin Yen's violence would eventually become domestic violence, planting fear where gratitude had briefly existed. Li Xinru cared deeply about reputation and social status, so the argument reached exactly the insecurity Tang Haili targeted. She decided that Shudin deserved better and promised to convince Lin Yen to leave. Hiren remembered the 30 defeated guards and showed more caution, but eventually followed his wife's decision. Once the parents left, Tang Jiangwo's group moved to their second plan. Shudin still owned a significant block of Tang Group shares, and as long as she kept them, she remained a threat to their control. Tang Yun proposed giving her an impossible business assignment, then using failure as a clean excuse to remove her. She had spent years isolated by illness and had almost no business experience, connections, or professional network. A large contract requirement would therefore look like a merit test while being designed for her to lose. Tang Jiangwo approved immediately, pleased that the next attack could be disguised as company governance instead of family revenge. Meanwhile, Lin Yen followed Shudin and Xiaolan to the place they actually called home. It was a worn apartment roughly 20 years old, with peeling walls, dim corridors, and furniture that had survived far better decades. Xiaolan treated it like a palace because she finally had a father to show around. She dragged Lin Yen from the living room to the kitchen and bedroom, proudly explaining every corner. Shudin stood near the doorway watching them, smiling through the emotion she still had not learned to hide. The apartment made Lin Yen understand how far Shuezin's branch had fallen despite her position on paper. That evening, her parents returned, and Hiren visibly flinched when he saw the son-in-law who had defeated the Tang guards. Lin Yen greeted both elders politely and called them mom and dad, giving them more courtesy than his own parents had shown him. Li Xinru did not return the warmth. She asked directly whether he truly believed he was good enough for her daughter. Shudin tried to interrupt, but her mother continued, pointing to the restored face, family shares, and future marriage opportunities. In Li Xinru's view, a beautiful Tang heiress could now choose wealthy heirs, business leaders, or political families instead of an ex-convict. She offered Lin Yen money, a job, and even help finding another woman if he would leave voluntarily. Lin Yen did not get angry, because he understood the fear beneath her hostility. He admitted that no mother would feel comfortable seeing her daughter marry a man who had just left prison. Li Xinru paused, surprised that the violent man from the ballroom was answering her like a reasonable adult. Lin Xin said he would prove that he was not inferior to the rich young men she preferred. Then he turned toward Shudin and gave her the choice that actually mattered. If she wanted him gone, he would leave without turning gratitude into an obligation. Shudin walked to his side, held his arm, and stated that Lin Yen was her husband and the only man she intended to accept. Xiaolan wrapped herself around his leg and announced that he was her only daddy. Li Xinru's composure collapsed into dramatic frustration as both daughter and child united against her plan. Hiren hovered nearby, without enough courage to support either side strongly. Shuedin quietly asked Lin Yen not to take her mother's behavior personally, because she was not cruel at heart. Lin Yen repeated that he understood and promised to earn the family's approval instead of demanding it. Li Xinru finally delivered one immediate condition: Lin Yen would sleep on the sofa and stay away from Shudin's bed. The cramped apartment created its own kind of tension after the public wedding chaos. There was no guest room, no private suite, and almost no space where 5 people could avoid noticing one another. Li Xinru's sofa rule therefore placed Lin Yen only a few steps from the bedroom, while pretending distance solved everything. Shuden understood the absurdity, but also knew her mother was testing whether Lin Yen would become angry when denied what a husband might expect. For the first nights, Lin Yen accepted the sofa without trying to force the issue. That patience slowly undermined Li Xinru's assumption that he had married only for Shuden's body. Shuden's invitation later came from watching him respect the boundary rather than from pressure. She had never shared normal courtship with anyone before, so even asking him to sleep beside her required visible courage. Her nervousness showed in the way she remained near the doorway and twisted the fabric of her nightgown while waiting for an answer. Lin Yen understood that the request was not permission to treat her gratitude like ownership. He moved carefully because Shuden had spent years controlling every part of her life around fear, rumors, and Xiaolan's safety. Li Xinru's sudden voice interrupted the moment, before either of them learned how far the trust would go. The cleaver made the argument ridiculous, but the mother-in-law was serious enough that Lin Yen respected the blade more than the words. She knew how to hold it properly, which made him suspect she had spent plenty of time in a kitchen, even while acting like a family commander. Shuen refused to let the interruption push Lin Yen completely out of the room. That resistance surprised her mother, because the daughter who had tolerated clan abuse for years was suddenly drawing a boundary inside her own home. Li Xinru's solution was to sleep on the floor, as a human barrier between the couple. The first night became an endurance contest. Nobody could win. Lin Yen lay close enough to feel Shuden's yin energy, but not close enough for either of them to relax naturally. Shuden's lay stiffly under the blanket, while her mother watched from below like a security guard protecting restricted property. The quick kiss on Lin Yen's cheek was Shuden's tiny rebellion against an arrangement she found humiliating. She moved so fast that Li Xinru missed it completely. Lin Yen did not respond with anything larger, because turning the secret gesture into a confrontation would have punished Shuden for trusting him. The yin energy flowing from her during sleep had a separate effect on his body. The 9 yang dragons settled more consistently than they did through brief contact during the day. That improvement confirmed that proximity itself could create a stabilizing influence even without another dangerous flare. Several nights of the floor guard routine damaged Li Xinru. Most of all, she refused to sleep deeply because she wanted to catch Lin Yen making a move, then spent each morning exhausted from winning nothing. Shuden became increasingly irritated that her adult marriage was being supervised like a school trip. Lin Yen turned the absurdity into humor instead of anger, which made it harder for Li Xinru to provoke the confrontation she expected. Her eventual evaluation period proposal was therefore a retreat disguised as authority. She could not admit the nightly surveillance had failed, so she created rules that allowed her to stop doing it. The strange permission to seek relief elsewhere came from Li Xinru trying to make 2 arguments at once. She wanted to deny Lin Yen access to Shuden, while also proving he would leave the marriage if another woman became available. Shuden saw the contradiction immediately when her mother reported his acceptance as evidence of disloyalty. Instead of becoming jealous on command, she asked what result Li Xinru expected after creating the restrictions herself. That response marked another change in Shuden. She was beginning to defend her own choices directly, rather than asking permission from whichever elder spoke loudest. The old sofa was too short for him and filled with springs that made Blackstone's sleeping arrangements seem almost comfortable. Late that night, after Xiaolan fell asleep, Shuiden appeared in the doorway wearing a simple silk nightgown and gathering her courage. She quietly invited Lin Yen to sleep in the bed instead of suffering on the sofa. The request carried more trust than seduction. Shuden had known him only hours, but he had already transformed her life. Lin Yen agreed and put an arm around her waist as they moved toward the bedroom. They were one step from the door when Li Xinru's voice came out of the darkness. She had been waiting awake specifically to prevent the situation she feared. Li Xinru argued that an engagement without official registration did not make them legally married and ordered Lin Yen away from her daughter. To make the point memorable, she returned from the kitchen carrying a large cleaver. Shuden refused to surrender the argument and dragged Lin Yen into the bedroom anyway. Li Xinru answered by laying a blanket on the floor beside the bed and sleeping there with the cleaver within reach. The arrangement destroyed any romantic mood instantly. Before closing her eyes, Shuden stole one quick kiss on Lin Yen's cheek and whispered that her mother should not know. Lin Yen fell asleep smiling while Shuden's natural yin energy quietly flowed into him and soothed the 9-dragon pure yang body. The same absurd arrangement continued for several nights, exhausting all 3 adults. Li Xinru eventually admitted she could not maintain a nightly guard post forever and proposed an evaluation period instead. Lin Yen could remain connected to Shuden, but he was not supposed to enter her room or touch her until her parents approved him. Lin Yen pointed out that he was a healthy young man with a wife living only a few steps away. Frustrated by her own rules, Li Xinru told him he could seek relief elsewhere as long as he did not bring anyone home. The permission was so strange that even Lin Yen had to confirm what she had just said. His constitution complicated the issue because one source of yin energy might not always be enough to keep the 9 dragons balanced. Still, he had no intention of using Li Xinru's trap as proof that Shuden meant nothing to him. Li Xinru immediately told her daughter that Lin Yen had agreed too easily, hoping the news would finally trigger a breakup. Shuden calmly reminded her mother that she had created the rule herself and could not blame Lin Yen for accepting the terms offered. The argument left Li Xinru with no satisfying response. Shuden then left for Tong Group, where Tong Yun was already waiting to begin the family's next move. The conference room contained relatives from nearly every branch, all seated like a tribunal rather than co-workers. Tong Jiangwo opened with false praise for Shuden's recovery and marriage, then shifted quickly into a supposed test of competence. Because she had been absent from business for years, he said she needed to prove herself before taking any meaningful position. The assignment was to bring Tong Group a major new contract. Shuden explained that illness had kept her away from business and that she had no professional network to draw from. Tang highly dismissed the concern by saying the company had no reason to reward someone who lacked ability. Other relatives piled on, accusing her of collecting benefits without contributing and demanding she earn her place. Then Tang Jiangwo revealed the trap's real scale. He had already announced company-wide that Shuden would secure a contract worth more than 50 million yuan within 1 week. The public announcement made quiet retreat impossible and guaranteed that failure would become evidence against her. Shuden understood exactly what they wanted: fail the impossible target, lose credibility, surrender the shares, and leave without giving them visible blood on their hands. She stood anyway and accepted the challenge. If they wanted proof she deserved to lead, she would bring back the contract and force them to acknowledge it. The room laughed at her confidence, but Shuechen walked out with the deadline still hanging over her. When she returned home, she tried to hide the fear by going straight to the kitchen and pretending nothing important had happened. Hiren lasted only moments before telling the rest of the family everything. His first solution was surrender. He begged Lin Yen to convince Shuden to give up her shares and asked Tong Jiangwo for mercy. Li Xinru twisted her husband's ear for being spineless, but even she could not explain where 50 million yuan would come from. The apartment fell quiet under a problem that looked impossible to everyone except Lin Yen. He asked whether 50 million was truly the entire crisis and laughed when they confirmed it. Li Xinru assumed he was boasting because no unemployed ex-convict should speak about that amount casually. Lin Yen simply said he would handle it and stepped into the hallway with his phone. He called Su Chonglong and asked whether the Dragon Lord's 10 billion yuan cooperation offer was still available. Su Chonglong laughed at the question and said that once he gave his word, the deal was already settled. Lin Yen asked for one adjustment: Tang Shuden would be the person who signed it. Su Chonglong agreed immediately and told him to send his wife to Long Dragon Group the next morning. The call lasted less than 2 minutes. Tang Jiangwo's family had built an elaborate 1-week trap around 50 million yuan. Lin Yen answered it with a single conversation worth 10 billion. He returned to the kitchen and found Shuden washing vegetables, with the water running loudly enough to hide her crying. Her shoulders shook even though she kept her back turned, unwilling to let her parents see how frightened she was. Lin Yen stepped behind her and wrapped his arms around her without exposing the excuse. When she finally admitted she did not know how to find 50 million, he told her exactly where to go. The next morning, she should visit Long Dragon Group and ask for its chairman. Shuden stared at him because ordinary employees could not simply walk into one of Jiangbei's biggest companies and request the boss. Lin Yen promised that Su Chonglong would give her the contract. Then he raised the number she should expect, far beyond the family's challenge. She was going in for 50 million and, if his sworn brother kept his word, walking out with 10 billion. The 50 million yuan challenge also attacked Shuden on several levels at once. It was not enough for her to find any revenue source. The deal had to be large enough that senior managers would normally cultivate it for months. The 1-week deadline prevented her from slowly rebuilding contacts or learning the company's sales process. Tang Jiangwo's public announcement ensured ordinary employees would watch the attempt and remember the failure. If Shuden refused the assignment, the family could call her cowardly. If she accepted and failed, they could call her incompetent. If she complained about unfairness, they could accuse her of demanding privileges because of her shares. The trap worked precisely because every normal supported the conclusion Tang Jiangwo had already chosen. Shuden accepted anyway because surrendering without a fight would teach the clan that pressure always worked. That stubbornness was one of the traits Lin Yen had already noticed beneath her years of caution. She could be frightened and still move forward. At home, Hiren's instinct to surrender came from years of surviving the Tang hierarchy by avoiding direct conflict. Li Xinru hated that habit, but had also spent years watching their branch lose influence, so even her anger could not produce a business solution. Lin Yen's laughter sounded offensive to them because they were measuring the problem with the tools available to ordinary employees. He was measuring it with a sworn brother who had already offered 10 billion yuan before Shueden ever received the assignment. The phone call did more than satisfy the target. By putting Shueden's name on the meeting, Lin Yen gave her direct proof that the opportunity belonged to her actions rather than the Tang elders' approval. Su Chonglong understood the intention immediately and agreed to treat her as the central party. That was why he came downstairs personally when she arrived. He wanted every employee and every Tang observer to see which person Long Dragon Group recognized. Tang Yun's presence in the lobby accidentally made the message even clearer. The cousin tried to remove Shuden at the exact moment the chairman was coming to welcome her. His humiliation, therefore, came from his own assumption, rather than a trap Lin Yen designed. Upstairs, Shuden's request for 50 million was careful because she still believed she was asking for an extraordinary favor. Su Chonglong already had a much larger number prepared before she entered the room. The stamped contract showed that Lin Yen's call had been treated as a real business instruction, not a vague promise between friends. Shuden checked the seal's signatures and figures because years of being tricked by relatives had trained her to distrust sudden good fortune. Su Chonglong did not demand private favors from her in exchange. That absence mattered later when Tang Jiangwo's family claimed the contract had to be based on an affair. Their theory ignored the simplest evidence. The chairman tied everything to Lin Yen's request from the beginning. When Shuden returned to Tang Group, she chose verification rather than arguing emotionally against accusations of forgery. Calling Long Dragon's public line made the confirmation independent of her own word. The agreement number was already in the system, which removed the possibility that she had produced a convincing-looking paper overnight. Tang Jiangwo's side then changed strategy without acknowledging the lost argument. That pattern repeated throughout the source. Whenever evidence destroyed one accusation, they moved to a new accusation rather than reconsidering their goal. The attempted project takeover followed the same logic. Tang Group might legally control company resources, but the counterparty still controlled whom it trusted to manage the relationship. Tang Yun ignored that basic fact because he assumed his family title mattered more than Shuden's personal relationship with the client. Su Chonglong's 2 slaps at headquarters were therefore a business consequence as much as a personal humiliation. He was defending the condition under which he had agreed to cooperate. The threat to cancel the entire deal if Shuden were replaced converted her role from optional employee to contractual necessity in practice. That strengthened her standing inside Tang Group more than the original assignment had ever intended. The family's deep fake plan was born from refusing to accept that new reality. If they could not remove Shuden through performance, they would try to remove the husband supporting her. They chose jealousy because Lin Yen's public violence made it seem like an easy emotional trigger. What they missed was that his medical examination had given him direct knowledge about Shueden's history. What they missed again was his technical training. Tang Yun believed the same lack of formal education that made Lin Yen look weak socially also made him easy to fool digitally. Blackstone turned that assumption upside down. Lin Yen's teachers had given him advanced knowledge without any of the public credentials Tang Yun used to rank people. That gap between visible status and real competence was the central reason the Tang schemes kept failing. The later decision to double Shuden's contract to 20 billion widened that gap even more. Su Chonglong was not simply rewarding Lin Yen. He was protecting the relationship from Tang Group interference by shifting the agreement closer to Shuden personally. The larger amount also made it much harder for the Tang family to pretend her contribution was minor. Every attempt to erase her created another reason for outside partners to attach greater value directly to her name. Shuden barely slept that night because every rational thought told her Lin Yen's promise was impossible. At dawn, she put on a plain old shirt, tied her hair back, and carried a worn shoulder bag toward Long Dragon Group's glass headquarters. The skyscraper looked like another world compared with the apartment she had left, and her confidence weakened with every step toward the lobby. She entered anyway because the Tang deadline left her no safer option. Before she reached reception, Tang Yun's voice greeted her with exactly the contempt she expected from family. He had arrived to discuss a 100 million yuan opportunity through one of his own contacts and immediately mocked her clothes. Tang Yun asked whether she had come to clean the building rather than negotiate inside it. His companions laughed while Shudin kept walking, refusing to give him the satisfaction of turning around. He raised his voice so employees nearby could hear and called her a widow who had married a convict. Then he told security to remove the garbage collector before she stained the company's floor. Two guards moved toward Shudin, uncertain, but willing to follow the louder, better-dressed guest. Before either touched her, a private elevator opened with a sharp chime. Black-suited bodyguards stepped out in formation, and Su Chonglong walked between them. The entire lobby changed posture instantly because the chairman almost never came downstairs for ordinary visitors. Tang Yun mistook the scene for his own welcome and hurried forward with a business card in hand. He introduced himself and mentioned his planned 100 million yuan discussion. One of Su Chonglong's bodyguards kicked him across the marble before he could finish. The Dragon Lord never even looked at him. His attention went straight to Shudin, the nervous woman in plain clothes standing near security. Su Chonglong smiled warmly, approached her personally, and welcomed her as though she were the most important guest in the building. He invited her to the private elevator and said he had been waiting for her. Shudin's thoughts stalled completely while Tang Yun stared from the floor, unable to understand what he was seeing. Upstairs, Su Chonglong seated her in a private office overlooking Jiangbei and served the best tea in the building. Shudin gathered enough courage to ask whether Long Dragon Group might consider placing an order with Tang Group. She carefully suggested something around 50 million yuan, already feeling embarrassed by the size of her request. Su Chonglong laughed, called for the prepared agreement, and placed a fully stamped contract in front of her. The first phase alone was worth 1 billion yuan, with the broader cooperation reaching 10 billion. Shudin checked the NAR several times because it was 20 times the requirement that had seemed impossible the previous night. She asked whether there had been a mistake and why a chairman who had never met her would offer so much. Su Chonglong answered with the simplest truth. Her husband had called him. That answer shocked her more than the money. Lin Yen had spoken casually about sending her there, but she had never imagined the relationship behind that confidence. Su Chonglong looked out over the city and told her she did not yet understand what kind of man she had married. She had not married an ordinary convict, he said. She had married a dragon. While Shudin signed, Lin Yen sat at home eating simple food with Shaolin, entirely unconcerned about the trap. The result was already decided before his wife entered the building. Later that day, Shudin walked back into Tang Group's conference room, carrying the agreement in her old bag. Tang Zhangwo, Tang Haili, and the surrounding relatives expected her to return defeated and ready to surrender shares. Tang Haili asked whether she had somehow found the required 50 million yet. Tang Zhangwo offered fake sympathy and suggested she could simply admit failure and hand over what she could not protect. Shudin placed the Long Dragon agreement on the table. Then she stated the first phase value, 1 billion yuan. The room went silent before relatives rushed forward to read the page for themselves. Tang Haili snatched at the contract, while Tang Zhangwo immediately claimed the official seal had to be forged. They threatened police involvement because believing in a crime felt easier than believing Shudin had succeeded. Shudin calmly called Long Dragon Group's main line and asked for confirmation with the agreement number. The response came through the speaker after a short wait. Contract was authentic, personally approved by Chairman Su, and already registered in Long Dragon Group's system. Nobody had an answer when the call ended. Shudin left the document on the table and walked out, mentioning another meeting with Su Chonglong to discuss execution details. Only after the door closed did Tang Zhangwo's faction recover enough to start planning again. They could not deny the contract, so they decided to steal the credit and control instead. Tang Haili argued that Shudin had only brought in the opportunity. Project execution still required a manager from Tang Group. Tang Zhangwo appointed Tang Yun to take over the Long Dragon partnership and represent the family officially. If Tang Yun controlled delivery, negotiations, and reporting, they could slowly erase Shudin's role from the success. Then the patriarch's scheme became uglier. He suggested that Su Chonglong must have offered the huge contract because he desired the newly beautiful Shudin. If necessary, they could push her toward the chairman, as part of maintaining the business relationship. That would remove her from Lin Yen, preserve the money, and leave Tang Zhangwo's branch in control. Shudin knew none of this while riding home, still struggling to believe that she had solved the one-week challenge in a single morning. She entered the apartment, found Lin Yen preparing food, and hugged him with enough force to nearly knock the knife from his hand. The relief finally came out as she told him she had done it. Lin Yen praised his wife instead of taking credit, which only made her more determined to understand what had happened. She asked directly why Su Chonglong would help her and what relationship Lin Yen had with the Dragon Lord. Lin Yen answered that they were sworn brothers. Li Xinru heard from the living room and immediately assumed the friendship came from prison. Before Lin Yen could explain anything further, Shudin's phone rang. Tong Yun called to announce that the family had assigned him full responsibility for the Long Dragon project. He told his cousin to stop worrying about it and behave quietly at home. The call ended before Shudin could argue. She stood frozen because the contract meant to save her position was being taken the same day she earned it. Lin Yen remained calm through the entire call. He knew Tong Yun was about to introduce himself to the man who had kicked him across the lobby that morning. Shudin tried to act as though losing the project did not matter, which only made the disappointment more obvious. Li Xinru and Hiren panicked, convinced Tang Group had the legal right to replace her because the company name appeared on the agreement. Lin Yen said they could not steal it and promised to handle the problem. Li Xinru accused him of bluffing about business he did not understand. Lin Yen did not argue. He sent one short message and returned to the evening as if nothing had happened. The next morning, Tong Yun dressed for triumph and arrived at Long Dragon Group with several assistants. He announced himself at reception as the new project lead for the 10 billion yuan cooperation. The system showed no appointment under his name, but Tang Yun insisted the chairman would recognize the Tang family's young master. After a call upstairs, reception told him to wait. Tong Yun interpreted even that delay as evidence of his growing importance and bragged to his companions about future influence. A few minutes later, Su Chonglong stepped from the elevator. Tong Yun hurried toward him with a business card, smiling as though the chairman had come down personally to honor him. Su Chonglong confirmed his name, then slapped him hard across the face. Tong Yun stared in disbelief and tried to explain that he had come to manage the partnership. A second slap knocked out a tooth and sent him to the floor. Su Chonglong grabbed his tie and made the terms unmistakable. Long Dragon Group recognized Tang Shuedin and Tang Shuedin only. If Tang Group sent another representative, Su Chonglong would end the cooperation and make the company regret challenging his decision. Security dragged Tong Yun outside and dumped him on the front steps with his suit ruined and his confidence shattered. He returned to the Tang family mansion bruised, missing a tooth, and carrying a threat none of them could dismiss. Tang Jiangwo and Tang Haili fell silent when they heard that Long Dragon would destroy the partnership if Shudin were replaced. Tong Yun, however, found an explanation that preserved his ego. He decided Shudin must be secretly involved with Su Chonglong because he could imagine no other reason for such protection. Tang Jiangwo accepted that assumption almost instantly. Instead of questioning it, the family converted the rumor into another attack plan. Tang Jiangwo told Tong Yun to use artificial intelligence face-swapping technology to fabricate an explicit video involving Shudin and Su Chonglong. The fake would then be sent to Lin Yen. Their theory was simple. Lin Yen was violent, jealous, poorly educated, and fresh from prison. If he believed the video, he might assault Shudin or destroy the marriage on their behalf. Even if he was arrested afterward, Tang Jiangwo would gain the opening he needed to isolate her again. The plan depended entirely on Lin Yen being exactly the ignorant ex-convict they imagined. They had no idea one of the masters who trained him was an expert in artificial intelligence and digital deception. The following morning, Su Chonglong called Lin Yen and invited him to lunch at a private room in Dragon Restaurant. Before leaving, Lin Yen reassured Shudin that her contract remained secure and told her to stop worrying about Tong Yun. At the restaurant, Su Chonglong confirmed that he had personally thrown the would-be replacement out. He promised that nobody except Shudin would touch the project. Then his entire expression changed as he delivered news far more personal than business. His new partner was pregnant. More importantly, medical testing showed the child was a boy, and biologically his. The Dragon Lord, who terrified half of Jiangbei, struggled to control tears as he described seeing confirmation with his own eyes. Lin Yen's acupuncture had repaired what decades of medicine never solved. They drank to the future child, and Su Chonglong repeated that Lin Yen would be family to the boy as well. Su Chonglong's lunch invitation at Dragon Restaurant also showed how quickly the sworn brother relationship had become genuine. He did not summon Lin Yen to an office or send a subordinate with business paperwork. He booked a private meal, filled the table heavily, and treated the younger man as family before discussing either contracts or danger. The pregnancy news explains some of that warmth. Su Chonglong had spent years believing the children in his home continued his bloodline, then learned all three were unrelated to him. Lin Yen's treatment gave him a biological future almost immediately after that collapse. The confirmed boy, therefore, felt like proof that the worst day of his marriage had not ended his family line. That emotional debt was why Su Chonglong considered helping Shudin with contracts trivial by comparison. To him, 10 billion yuan was business. Lin Yen had given him a son he had stopped believing was possible. The injured Long Dragon fighters entered while that gratitude was still fresh, which made Lin Yen's decision to attend Yinshi Lake feel natural. He was not joining an underworld dispute for entertainment. The man facing that danger had already treated Lin Yen's wife as family and protected her business position without hesitation. Su Chonglong still tried to keep Lin Yen away from the fight because he misunderstood the source of his younger brother's confidence. He had seen medical miracles and cleverness, but had not yet seen Lin Yen release serious martial power. That gap in knowledge made the lake revelation stronger for him than for anyone else present. Afterward, the 30% share offer was not simply payment for killing an enemy. It formalized the reality that Long Dragon Group depended on a man Su Chonglong could not replace with hired fighters. Fang Xinhua had cost 100 million yuan and failed in half a minute. Lin Yen had come as family, solved the threat with one leaf, and then corrected the hired master's technique on the way out. Su Chonglong understood the difference between buying help for one night and securing an ally for future crises. The celebration ended when several battered men entered the private room. Their leader and the others were covered in bandages after another failed clash with 4C's trading company. For roughly half a year, 4C's had been moving into Jiangbei and taking over Su Chonglong's dock operations. The company had already captured a large part of the market because it possessed one fighter nobody on Su Chonglong's side could stop. That man had knocked out Lung Fong, a national free-fighting champion, with a single strike. 15 other fighters rushed him together and still failed to make the battle competitive. 4C's had now challenged Su Chonglong to settle control of the docks in a fight at Yinshi Lake that night. If Su lost, he would hand over the operations that supported a major part of his network. Lin Yen listened to the description and recognized the likely answer: an internal energy martial artist. To ordinary fighters, a practitioner who could project qi through physical attacks might as well belong to a different species. Lin Yen offered to come because Su Chonglong had already treated him like family. The Dragon Lord refused to let his younger sworn brother fight, assuming Lin Yen was talented, but nowhere near this level of danger. He said Lin Yen could watch from a safe distance and nothing more. Before Lin Yen corrected him, another guest arrived with 6 disciples wearing traditional martial clothing. The newcomer was Fang Xinhua, head of Xinhua Martial Arts School and widely regarded as Jiangbei's strongest martial artist. Su Chonglong greeted him with enormous respect because Fang was the only local expert believed capable of using internal energy. When introduced to Lin Yen, Fang Xinhua looked him over and immediately dismissed him as a civilian. He warned that a real martial challenge was not entertainment and that spectators could die from being too close. Lin Yen politely said he intended to help, which made Fang laugh openly. The older master said the 4C's fighter was a genuine internal energy expert, and Lin Yen would only create another body to protect. Lung Fong explained the difference for Su Chonglong. Internal energy practitioners merged qi with their bodies and could release force before their fists even made contact. During his own defeat, Lung Fong had been blasted backward, while the opponent's hand was still several inches away. Fang Xinhua then demonstrated by drawing one finger along a porcelain teacup. The cup separated into 2 clean halves without cracking anywhere else. Su Chonglong and the fighters stared at the precision in awe. Fang named his price for handling the 4C's master: 100 million yuan. Su Chonglong agreed immediately because losing the docks would cost far more. Fang then told Lin Yen that he could stand behind the disciples that night if he insisted on attending. Lin Yen accepted the condescension without correcting him. The teacup trick genuinely looked impressive to civilians, but it reminded Lin Yen of the earliest months of Blackstone training. Within his first year, he had progressed from crushing cups to projecting force through stone from several feet away. After 5 years under 100 masters, Fang Xinhua's display no longer registered as serious power. Lin Yen said nothing because Yinshi Lake would reveal the gap soon enough. Night fell as Su Chonglong's convoy reached the lakeside meeting place. Fang Xinhua stood with his disciples near the water, while Su's own men spread through the surrounding woods as a backup force. 38 armed fighters were hidden along the eastern approach with guns, blades, and radios. Su Chonglong had survived too long in the underworld to trust a single martial duel without another plan. They waited as the fog thickened and midnight approached. For a while, nothing happened, and Su Chonglong began joking that 4C's had lost courage after learning Fang Xinhua was present. Fang pretended humility, though his expression showed how much he enjoyed the idea. He reminded Lin Yen to stay behind the disciples when the real battle began. The celebration vanished when several injured men arrived at the private room. Gunshots cracked through the eastern woods. The radio erupted with shouts, confusion, and frightened reports that one attacker was breaking through the entire hidden force. Screams replaced gunfire. Then the channel went silent. 38 armed men had been neutralized in less than 2 minutes. Slow footsteps emerged from the trees as two figures entered the moonlight. The first was Zhang Sihai, the heavyset president of Four Seas Trading Company, smoking a cigar with complete confidence. Behind him walked Xiao Guhong, the lean internal energy expert responsible for the earlier defeats. There was no blood on his hands, despite what had happened in the woods. Zhang Xishe told Su Chonglong that an army would not matter while Master Xiao stood on his side. Su Chonglong answered by presenting his own expert. Fang Xinhua stepped forward and sent his chief disciple, Wang Yang, to test the opponent first. Wang Yang had trained for decades and was already considered an internal energy practitioner at a lower stage. Fang believed even a loss would force Xiao Guhong to reveal useful information. Xiao barely looked at the disciple and told him to leave if he wanted to live. Wang Yang attacked in anger, driving internal energy through a fast punch aimed directly at Xiao's face. Xiao shifted only slightly and released one casual palm. The invisible force struck before Wang Yang reached him and threw the disciple several meters backward. Wang Yang landed with a crushed chest and never rose again. Fang Xinhua rushed to the student he had trained since childhood and found no breath. The loss transformed pride into fury, and Fang stepped forward himself. He released his full internal energy, cracking the ground beneath his feet as he charged. The collisions between the two masters sent pressure through the shoreline and threw lake water into the air. Su Chonglong watched with a level of fear ordinary street battles had never taught him. The fight ended in roughly 30 seconds. Fang Xinhua spat blood, crashed to one knee, and held an arm broken badly enough to end any thought of continuing. Xiao Guhong had not even begun to breathe hard. He mocked Fang for staying in one small city and mistaking local dominance for real martial achievement. Xiao revealed that his own master had reached a higher transformation realm and had forced him to grow through life-or-death battles across the country. Fang accepted the criticism because his body had already proven the difference. Xiao offered to spare him if he left immediately. Su Chonglong grabbed Fang's shoulder, desperate because without the hired master, nothing stood between him and death. Fang shook his head and admitted that staying would change nothing. He bowed toward Xiao and asked only that Su Chonglong be spared if they surrendered the docks. Su Chonglong dropped to his knees and agreed. His pregnant partner and unborn son had changed the calculation. Pride no longer mattered as much as leaving the lake alive. Zhang Sihai laughed and rejected the surrender. He had come for the business in Su Chonglong's life, and now he wanted both. Xiao Guhong raised his palm as internal energy gathered for a killing strike. Before he released it, a relaxed voice came from the back of Su Chonglong's group. Lin Yen asked why his big brother was kneeling when his little brother could simply kill the man threatening him. Every head turned as Lin Yen stood from the rock where he had been sitting and walked toward the center. The Yinshi Lake Challenge exposed another version of that same status mistake. Su Chonglong had hired Fang Shuo because every visible credential in Jiangbei pointed toward him. He owned the city's respected martial school, trained recognized fighters, and had spent decades building a reputation nobody local could challenge. Xiao Guhong arrived from outside that system and broke it in less than a minute. The 38 armed men in the woods were Su Chonglong's insurance against a martial surprise. Their collapse showed why ordinary weapons and numbers were unreliable once internal energy reached a certain level. Radio reports became fragmented because the hidden force could not even understand how one man was crossing their positions so quickly. By the time Su Chonglong heard silence, the backup plan he trusted more than Fang Xinhua was already gone. Wang Yang's death then changed the emotional tone of the duel. Before that moment, Fang's disciples treated the event as a chance to display their school. Afterward, they watched their senior brother die without landing a single meaningful hit. Fang Xinhua's own decision to fight was no longer about money or reputation alone. The dead disciple had trained under him since childhood, making retreat before trying personally almost impossible. His full power charge showed why he had dominated Jiangbei for so long. The ground cracked under his release, and the collision displaced lake water, effects far beyond ordinary street fighting. Xiao Guhong still dismantled him quickly. The broken arm was only the visible injury. Fang's confidence in the entire path he had followed for decades broke with it. Xiao's explanation about leaving the city and facing true life-or-death combat gave Fang a reason for the gap, rather than treating him as naturally inferior. That was why Fang could admit his arrogance instead of denying the result. Su Changlong's surrender came from a different calculation. Weeks earlier, he might have risked death rather than kneel before a rival controlling his docks. Now a biological son was finally on the way after years of deception. Dying at the lake would make the miracle Lin Yen gave him meaningless. His forehead touching the ground therefore represented responsibility as much as fear. Zhang Xihai's refusal to accept surrender revealed why Lin Yen later considered him a root that had to be removed. The Four Seas president was not satisfied with winning the business once his rival became vulnerable. He wanted Su Changlong dead, despite already holding the stronger position. Lin Yen judged that a man making that choice would return whenever another advantage appeared. Xiao Guhong's first scan of Lin Yen also demonstrated the value of concealed cultivation. Fang Xinhua could sense ordinary internal energy because he existed near that level. Xiao could read stronger practitioners than Fang, yet Lin Yen's control hid his energy so completely that the expert detected nothing. That concealment created a fatal false sense of scale. Xiao used a powerful ranged palm, but he did not begin with the caution he would have shown an equal. Lin Yen's neutralization taught him the truth only after the attack was committed. The willow leaf answered Fang Xinhua's earlier teacup demonstration in a way everyone present could understand. Fang had used internal energy to cut hard porcelain along a controlled line. Lin Yen used internal energy to turn something soft enough to tear by hand into a lethal ranged weapon. The difference was qualitative, not simply a stronger version of the same trick. Fang's immediate kneeling came from recognizing that gap through technique, rather than from being impressed by a corpse. He knew what should and should not be possible at his own stage. Su Changshalong's reaction mixed gratitude with fear, because Lin Yen's killing of Zhang Xihai happened after the danger appeared finished. That was the first time the Dragon Lord saw how Lin Yen handled future threats, not just current attacks. The 30% share offer was partly way to keep that ruthless judgment on his own side. Lin Yen's correction of Fang's seventh form then showed that his superiority was not based on raw power alone. He understood the structure of the older man's art well enough to diagnose a bottleneck after watching only a small amount of movement. That detail changed Fang's attitude from worship of strength to respect for knowledge. It also connected the lake back to Blackstone's broader training method. Lin Yen had not spent 5 years doing one kind of martial practice. He had been taught to observe how techniques were built, where energy traveled, and why a movement succeeded or failed. That analytical foundation was why a brief demonstration could reveal an error Fang had carried for decades. When Lin Yen left the lake thinking about dinner, the contrast was not indifference to danger. It reflected how completely the new home had shifted his priorities after only a short time. For years, survival and training had occupied every day. Now finishing a lethal martial conflict only made him think about the wife and child waiting in a worn apartment. Su Changlong reacted first and shouted for Lin Yen to run, before the younger man wandered into a fight he could not understand. Even the badly injured Fang Xinhua warned that Xiao Guhong had reached a level where ordinary martial artists died from a single mistake. Lin Yen ignored both warnings, stopped beside Su Changlong, and told him to stand up because kneeling did not suit the Dragon Lord. His sworn brother stared at him with panic rather than pride, convinced Lin Yen was sacrificing himself out of loyalty. Across the clearing, Zhang Xihai laughed until his stomach shook. He mocked Su Changlong for becoming desperate enough to send a young civilian against the man who had just defeated Yang Bei's best expert. Xiao Guhong studied Lin Yen more carefully than Zhang Xihai did. He searched for breathing patterns, qi circulation, muscular tension, or any sign of trained internal energy. He found absolutely nothing he could read. Lin Yen's cultivation was concealed so completely that Xiao read him as an ordinary young man with no martial foundation at all. That made the expert lose interest. Xiao told him to leave because killing someone that weak would not even count as a fight. Lin Yen smiled and said he had been thinking the same thing about Xiao until his big brother was threatened. The answer erased the last of Xiao Guhong's patience. He thrust one palm forward and released the same internal force that had already destroyed experienced fighters without physical contact. The pressure screamed across the clearing toward Lin Yen. Fang Xinsha shouted a warning, while Su Changlong shut his eyes rather than watch his sworn brother die. Lin Yen did not step aside. He glanced toward a willow tree beside the lake and plucked one leaf between two fingers. The incoming force reached the space in front of him and disappeared. It did not push him backward, tear his clothes, or even disturb his hair. The attack simply ceased to exist against a stronger layer of energy. Xiao Guhong could not perceive until it was too late. Zhang Xihai stopped laughing immediately. Fang Xinhua forgot the pain in his broken arm. Xiao Guhong's expression finally changed, because he understood the meaning of what had happened. His technique had not missed. It had been neutralized by someone operating far above his current level. Lin Yen called the attack too weak and raised the willow leaf. A flick of his fingers turned that soft piece of green into a projectile faster than Xiao Guhong could track. The leaf crossed the distance with a sharp pressure wave and struck the center of Xiao's forehead. He never formed a defense. The internal energy expert fell backward and hit the ground without another movement. The same man who had crossed 38 armed fighters, killed Wang Yang, and defeated Fang Xinhua in half a minute, was dead from one leaf. Lin Yen returned his hands to his pockets, as if the result required no more effort than brushing dust from his clothes. Su Changlong opened his eyes and needed several seconds to understand why the killing strike had never reached his brother. Fang Xinhua stared at the fallen Xiao Guhong, then at the leaf still lodged where no ordinary weapon should have mattered. He identified the principle in a broken whisper, using flowers and leaves as killing weapons through projected internal force. To him, that ability belonged to the realm of legends, far beyond the level he had spent decades trying to reach. Fang lowered himself to one knee before Lin Yen with instinctive respect. Zhang Sihai reacted in the opposite direction. His knees collapsed because every advantage 4Cs possessed had died before he understood the danger. The cigar fell from his mouth as he crawled toward Su Changlong and begged for his life. He offered the dock business, the rest of 4C's trading, and anything else that might make the Dragon Lord stop Lin Yen. Su Changlong hesitated over the surrender. The contest was already over, and killing Zhang Sihai after surrender could create political and commercial trouble. Lin Yen made the decision before his sworn brother did. He stepped forward, moved one hand, and broke Zhang Sihai's neck before the man could react. The 4C's president fell beside the fighter he had trusted to guarantee victory. Lin Yen wiped his fingers and told Su Changlong that removing weeds without pulling out the roots only invited them to grow again. The lesson chilled the Dragon Lord more than the martial display had. Su Changlong had spent decades around violence, yet Lin Yen's speed in deciding life and death was colder than anything he expected from a young man. At the same time, that ruthlessness had just saved his life and protected the future child waiting at home. Su Changlong stood, breathed deeply, and made his own decisive offer. He gave Lin Yen 30% of Long Dragon Group. Lin Yen questioned the size of the gift, but Su Changlong refused to call it generosity. Without Lin Yen nearby, he admitted, his own instincts had almost allowed an enemy to survive and threaten him again. The shares were payment for protection, partnership, and the right to call on Lin Yen when dangers exceeded ordinary underworld power. Lin Yen accepted after a short thought. From that night onward, Long Dragon Group's serious problems became his problems as well. Fang Xinhua remained kneeling until Lin Yen told him there was no need to apologize for the earlier disrespect. The older martial artist still asked for forgiveness because he now understood how badly he had judged the young man at lunch. Lin Yen waved away the insult and then casually pointed out a flaw in Fang's own technique. During the 7th form, Fang was releasing power through the wrong acupuncture path. Lin Yen named the proper channel and said correcting it should allow Fang to break through the bottleneck that had trapped him for years. Fang froze because the problem had consumed more than 2 decades of his training. One sentence from Lin Yen explained what none of his teachers or personal experimentation had solved. His respect deepened from fear into genuine gratitude. Lin Yen left Su Changlong to clean the lakeside, control witnesses, and deal with the bodies. Before the group separated, Su Changlong ordered everyone present to remain silent about what they had seen. The Dragon Lord understood that a hidden expert of Lin Yen's level would attract dangerous attention if the Rongfen families learned too early. Lin Yen climbed into a car and thought less about the dead enemies than whether Shuden had saved him dinner. He returned to the apartment around 2 in the morning, carrying the smell of cold lake air and a night nobody at home knew about. Li Shinru was waiting in a robe with her hands on her hips. She immediately attacked his lack of a normal job, the late hour, and the humiliation of her daughter being married to a man who wandered out all night. Lin Yen chose not to argue. He had just killed 2 dangerous men and learned enough from Blackstone to know some battles were not worth entering. Then he smelled food from the kitchen. Shuden appeared carrying a bowl of instant noodles topped with a fried egg and carefully arranged slices of braised beef. She had stayed awake because she did not want him coming home hungry. Before Lin Yen sat down, Xiaolin rushed from the bedroom in a small nightgown, with her hair pointing in every direction. The child had saved a chicken leg from dinner and placed it into his bowl as a secret gift. She warned him to eat quickly before Grandma noticed. Lin Yen looked at the simple noodles, the cold chicken leg, and the 2 people waiting for him, and felt something Blackstone had never taught. The meal cost almost nothing, yet it felt more valuable than the banquet food inside either wealthy family mansion. He kissed Xiaolin's cheek, making her laugh loudly enough that Li Shinru paused in the hallway. The mother-in-law said nothing, but even she could see how much brighter Xiaolan had become since Lin Yen entered the child's life. Shudin sat across the table and watched him eat with a small smile she tried not to make obvious. The midnight meal also changed Lin Yen's understanding of what his return had actually given him. At the Lin mansion, expensive food had been prepared for guests, while nobody thought to ask whether the son returning from prison had eaten. In the apartment, Shudin stayed awake over instant noodles because she noticed he was missing. Xiaolin saved part of her own dinner because sharing something she liked was the clearest gift a child could offer. Neither action involved status, yet both answered needs his biological family had ignored. That was why Lin Yen finally asked Shudin whether she believed his innocence. He did not present evidence, name witnesses, or explain Lynch's accident in detail first. The question measured whether her opinion of him depended entirely on the criminal label everyone else used. Shudin's immediate answer showed that she had been judging his actions since the hotel rather than the record attached to his name. Xiaolin's answer was even simpler, and therefore harder for him to dismiss. To the child, good people protected family when danger appeared. Lin Yen had done that repeatedly, so the prison story could not override what she had seen herself. The contrast made the apartment feel more like home than the mansion where he was born. Shudin's embarrassment after Xiaolan asked about kissing also revealed that trust was becoming attraction rather than remaining pure gratitude. Lin Yen noticed but chose not to force a declaration. He had already moved into her home, become Xiaolan's father figure, and changed the balance of her family conflict within days. Adding emotional pressure would turn protection into another burden. The promise of next time let Shudin keep the moment light while still knowing he understood. That patience later mattered when the deep fake tried to weaponize jealousy. Tang Yun assumed a man like Lin Yen would see a sexual image and react before thinking. Instead, Lin Yen had direct medical knowledge, technical training, and enough trust in Shudin to examine the evidence first. The fake therefore attacked the strongest part of the new relationship rather than its weakest part. Su Chonglong's panic created humor, but it also revealed how completely the lake battle had changed his view of Lin Yen. Before Yinshi Lake, he had tried to keep his sworn brother away from danger. Afterward, the possibility of being mistaken for Shudin's lover made the Dragon Lord fear for his own life immediately. His frantic search for inconsistencies in the video was partly self-defense and partly outrage that somebody had used his identity without permission. The mismatched Japanese audio gave him an obvious argument, even before the more technical face swap artifacts were discussed. Lin Yen never needed that proof personally, but letting Su Chonglong find it turned private fear into public anger at Tang Yun. The response again followed Lin Yen's Blackstone strategy training. Use an opponent's action to create another opponent against him. When Lin Yen later held Shudin after her permission to seek other women, the scene exposed a different vulnerability. Her words were rational on the surface and painful underneath. She was trying to be generous because Li Xinru had created rules that made normal married life impossible. But Shudin's tears showed that generosity was tangled with the old belief that keeping a man was something she had no right to demand. Lin Yen's promise to earn official approval gave her a concrete future instead of asking her to trust vague affection. He did not promise that every problem around his constitution was solved. He promised that his choice of Shuch would not disappear, simply because her mother made the relationship inconvenient. That distinction helped preserve the source's central emotional contrast. Lin Yen could solve a 50 million yuan crisis in minutes and kill a martial master with a leaf. Helping Shudin believe she deserved to be kept required patience rather than overwhelming force. Halfway through the bowl, Lin Yen became serious and asked her a question he had not wanted to ask his biological family. If he told her he had never committed the crime that sent him to prison, would she believe him? Shudin met his eyes and answered without hesitation. Shudin said she believed him completely. Xiaolan raised her hand like a student in class and announced that she believed her daddy too. Her reasoning was simple. Someone who protected mommy had to be a good person. The certainty in both voices reached Lin Yen more deeply than praise from any powerful ally. His own parents had never asked for his version of the story before trading 5 years of his life for Lynch's freedom. The people he had known for only days offered trust without demanding proof first. Xiaolan then asked why daddy kissed her cheek but never kissed mommy. Shudin turned red immediately and ordered the child back to bed. After Xiaolan escaped laughing, Shudin kept sneaking glances at Lin Yen and looking away whenever he noticed. He understood the message, but decided not to push the fragile trust faster than she could handle. When she leaned forward to collect his bowl, Lin Yen's joked that his lips were greasy and promised next time instead. Shudin carried the dishes to the kitchen with her face bright red and a smile she could not completely hide. For Lin Yen, That tiny domestic moment felt like proof that returning to Daxia had given him something worth protecting. The following morning, Shuden took Xiaolin to kindergarten and started walking back toward the apartment. A black Maybach stopped near her, and Su Chonglong stepped out carrying a document folder. The man feared across Jiangbei greeted her enthusiastically as sister-in-law and presented an updated Long Dragon agreement. Shuden opened the folder and immediately noticed that the number had changed. The cooperation was now worth 20 billion yuan instead of 10. Su Chonglong described the increase as a small adjustment to compensate for the trouble Tang Group had caused. Doubling a massive contract did not fit Shuden's definition of small. Lin Yen arrived while she was still staring at the pages and told her to accept his sworn brother's generosity. She looked between the two men, increasingly aware that the relationship hidden behind Lin Yen's prison clothes was much larger than she understood. Su Chonglong and Lin Yen exchanged a brief look that kept the events at Yinshi Lake unspoken. The Dragon Lord left, without mentioning shares, bodies, or the marshal's secret from the previous night. Moments later, Lin Yen's phone buzzed with a message from Tong Yun. The text pretended to offer sympathy while poisoning Shuden's reputation in every sentence. Tong Yun repeated the old accusations about her child and claimed she had begun sleeping with Su Chonglong after recovering her beauty. Beneath the message was a link to a video. Lin Yen opened it and saw fabricated explicit footage using Shuden's face and Su Chonglong's face. His grip tightened around the phone, not because he believed what he saw, but because of the insult behind creating it. He had checked Shuden's pulse personally and already knew the story Tong Yun was trying to sell was impossible. He also recognized multiple signs of artificial intelligence manipulation almost immediately. One of his Blackstone teachers had helped pioneer technology far more sophisticated than the crude face swap on screen. The lighting, facial edges, motion, and mismatched audio all exposed the fake. Tong Yun had accidentally selected one of the worst possible people in Daxia to deceive with AI. Shuden noticed Lin Yen's expression and asked what had happened. He sent her inside, saying he had a small matter to discuss with her brother-in-law, and she should not worry. Once she entered the building, Lin Yen handed the phone to Su Chonglong, without explaining what he was about to see. The Dragon Lord leaned in expecting ordinary adult entertainment, and began commenting before recognizing the faces. His voice stopped when recognition finally hit. The man in the fabricated video was him. The woman was his sworn brother's wife. Su Chonglong nearly dropped the phone as every survival instinct in his body activated at once. He remembered the willow leaf at Yinshi Lake and the effortless neck snap that followed. If Lin Yen believed even part of the video, Su Chonglong knew his status. Bodyguards and money would not keep him alive. He shouted that the footage was fake and swore he had never had any such relationship with Shuden. Lin Yen let the silence stretch long enough for the Dragon Lord to panic even harder. Su Chonglong scrubbed through the video searching desperately for proof. He finally pointed out that the male voice was speaking Japanese, a language he barely knew. Then he found visible seams around the swapped face and identified the deep fake himself. Lin Yen calmly agreed that somebody was clearly trying to frame him. Relief weakened Su Chonglong for only a moment before rage replaced the fear. He demanded the name of the person responsible for turning him into a fake adult film actor and threatening his sworn brother's marriage. Lin Yen showed him Tong Yun's message. Su Chonglong read the slander, cursed the sender, and immediately called his people. He ordered every available Long Dragon man to assemble at Tang Group headquarters. The Dragon Lord drove away promising that Tong Yun would regret ever creating the video. Lin Yen watched the Maybach disappear with a small smile. He had recognized the fake from the beginning, but allowing Su Chonglong to discover the insult himself gave the Dragon Lord a personal reason to act. One of Lin Yen's strategy teachers would have called it borrowing another man's blade to cut down an enemy. Lin Yen returned to the apartment without needing to raise his own hand. Shuden sat on the couch in a light blue house dress and immediately noticed him studying her. When she asked why, Lin Yen simply told his wife she was beautiful. The compliment turned her ears red, but the conversation soon shifted toward the restriction her mother had imposed. Shuden admitted that forcing a young husband to live beside his wife without normal intimacy was unfair. She promised to keep pushing her parents toward official registration. Then, with visible difficulty, she said that if Lin Yen truly could not wait, she would understand if he found someone else. Lin Yen asked whether she really meant that. Shuden said yes without looking directly at him. He told her to turn around. When she did, the performance collapsed. Her lower lip was white from biting it, tears filled her eyes, and every muscle in her face was fighting not to show how much the idea hurt. Lin Yen understood what was happening beneath the permission. Shudens had spent years being told that no man would want her and had learned to release people before they could abandon her first. Now she was offering freedom not because she felt nothing, but because part of her still believed she had no right to ask anyone to stay. The tears escaped before she could stop them. Lin Yen pulled her into his arms and held her until the shaking eased. He promised that he would pass her parents' test and marry her properly. There was no joke behind the promise, and no attempt to turn her fear into leverage. Shuden gripped the back of his shirt and finally let herself believe that he was choosing to remain. For Lin Yen, holding her in that tiny apartment hurt more than taking a martial strike ever had. Power could crush enemies, but it could not instantly erase the wounds left by years of being unwanted. He decided that earning Shuden's trust would require staying consistent long after the dramatic rescue was over. Across the city, Su Chonglong was turning Tang Yun's scheme into a disaster of a very different kind. He changed into black clothes, rolled up his sleeves, and summoned Long Dragon Group's full street force. A convoy of roughly 100 vehicles surrounded Tang Group headquarters and blocked the street. Hundreds of men in matching uniforms poured out after Su Chonglong gave the order. Neighbors and nearby shopkeepers raised phones to record what looked like a private army preparing to storm a corporation. Su Chonglong explained the mission with brutal simplicity. Someone had fabricated explicit footage using his face, and he intended to tear apart the workplace of the man responsible. Then he led the charge through Tang Group's front doors. The Long Dragon raid also exposed how differently ordinary employees viewed the Tang family's private war. Most workers had no interest in defending Tang Yun's reputation once hundreds of armed-looking men entered behind Su Chonglong. Desks and electronics mattered to the company. Surviving the afternoon mattered more to the people sitting behind them. That was why the security captain chose retreat as soon as he recognized the Dragon Lord. He understood that stopping a normal trespasser and confronting Jiang Bei's underground network were completely different jobs. The destruction moved upward only after Su Chonglong learned Tang Yun's location. His men were not searching randomly for Shuden or other Tang relatives. The rage had a specific target created by the deepfake. Tang Yun's confidence upstairs made the collision sharper because he was celebrating two imagined victories at once. He believed the fake had already ruined Shuden's marriage, and he believed Su Bangxia's project would replace the influence his cousin gained from Long Dragon. Neither belief survived Su Chonglong entering the room. Tang Hailei's attempt to use Bangxia as a shield relied on family status rather than facts again. He assumed two powerful organizations would automatically protect one another from public conflict. Bangxia instead asked why Su Chonglong was angry before deciding whether Tang Group deserved help. The explanation changed her position because Lin Yen was not an abstract stranger in somebody else's family drama. He had saved her in Zixuan when they were drugged and surrounded by armed men. Tang Yun had therefore created an attack against a person Bangxia already owed directly. Canceling the project was not simply revenge on Lin Yen's behalf. It also reflected a business concern about trusting a family willing to fabricate intimate evidence to manipulate relatives. The same people could use similar tactics against partners when incentives changed. Su Chonglong's revelation about Lin Yen's martial level added a second reason for Bangxia to reevaluate the man from the cruise. She had already seen him stop attackers and detoxify poison, but Yinshi Lake placed him in a category far beyond ordinary bodyguards. Her offer to redirect the technology project toward Lin Yen combined gratitude, curiosity, and recognition of his hidden value. Tang Yun heard that offer from the floor, making the consequence directly traceable to his own scheme. The deep fake was designed to make Lin Yen lose Shweden. Instead, it cost Tang Yun a 10 billion yuan project and pushed another powerful connection toward Lin Yen. The office destruction downstairs included the kind of ordinary losses that made the invasion feel even more chaotic to employees. Some workers watched expensive hardware disappear from desks that they had spent years protecting from coffee spills. Others cared more about phones, lunch orders, and personal items trapped inside the path of hundreds of angry men. Nobody understood why the chairman of Long Dragon Group was furious enough to pay for rebuilding an entire floor later. The absurd reason would sound unbelievable, even after they learned it involved a deepfake video. Upstairs, Tang Yun's choice to make Su Chonglong wait added one final insult before the door came down. He wanted to appear important in front of Su Bangxia's and believed delaying another chairman would make him look powerful. Instead, the order demonstrated that he had no idea what was happening inside his own building. Tang Hailey approved the move because father and son kept reinforcing each other's worst assumptions. Neither considered that a chairman arriving with hundreds of men might not be seeking a polite meeting. The employee trying to warn them had already seen enough destruction to know business etiquette was no longer relevant. By the time Su Chonglong reached the third floor, Tang Yun's imagined negotiation advantage had become a survival problem. Bangxia's calm throughout the invasion contrasted with the Tang men's panic. She had already survived armed attackers at sea and came from a family powerful enough that Su Chonglong still spoke to her respectfully. That position allowed her to hear both sides, instead of reacting to whichever man shouted first. Once Lin Yen's name entered the explanation, the meeting stopped being a neutral corporate dispute for her. Her decision to cancel Tang Group's project followed from a debt the Tang family never knew existed. That hidden history was another example of why judging Lin Yen only through prison records kept producing disastrous calculations. The receptionist began her standard greeting, then saw Su Chonglong's tattooed arms and the mass of men filling the lobby behind him. Her voice died as the chairman ordered civilians out of the way and told his people to start breaking property. Computer monitors went first, followed by keyboards, printers, phones, filing cabinets, and expensive office equipment. Within minutes, the ground floor looked as though a storm had moved through the building. Employees scrambled for stairwells and side exits, while nobody dared challenge the Long Dragon Force directly. In the security room, one younger guard suggested stopping the invasion. His captain recognized Su Chonglong immediately and pointed out that their salaries did not include dying for Tang family office furniture. The entire security team withdrew through a fire escape rather than turn a corporate dispute into a massacre. Su Chonglong grabbed one frightened employee and demanded Tang Yun's location. The answer was the third-floor general manager's office. He released the employee, pointed his men toward the stairs, and continued upward. Tang Yun was completely unaware of the approaching disaster because he was occupied with the most important meeting of his career. Across from him sat Su Bangxia, the same AI developer Lin Yen had saved on the cruise ship. She had come to discuss a 10 billion yuan technology project involving Tang Group. Tang Yun believed the opportunity had arrived because of his own influence and spent the meeting imagining how it would elevate him above Shuadin. His father Tang Haili stood nearby sharing the same confidence. To them, Shuadin's Long Dragon contract suddenly looked small compared with a partnership connected to the powerful Su family and advanced AI technology. Tang Yun was also personally fascinated by Bangxia and began imagining that business success might become a relationship. Bangxia remained professional and showed no interest in his fantasy. The building began shaking from the destruction below, but Tang Yun initially dismissed the noise as an employee problem. He was more interested in the deep fake he had sent Lin Yen roughly an hour earlier. Because Lin Yen had not replied, Tang Yun assumed the plan had succeeded. In his mind, silence meant the violent convict was already attacking Shudan or destroying their marriage. He felt particularly confident that Lin Yen could never recognize the fabrication. The Lin heir had not finished school properly, had spent years in prison, and therefore seemed technologically ignorant from Tang Yun's perspective. That assumption would have been funny even without the hundreds of angry men now climbing the stairs. An employee finally burst into the office, breathing hard enough to interrupt Bangxia's discussion. He reported that Chairman Su Chonglong had arrived with a huge group. Tang Yun's first reaction was delight. He imagined Shudan had become unavailable after the fake video and that Su Chonglong had come to transfer the Long Dragon project to him. Tang Yun even told the employee to make the chairman wait because he was currently meeting Miss Su. The terrified employee refused to deliver that message. He explained that Su Chonglong was not waiting in the lobby. His men were destroying it. Tang Yun's confident smile disappeared at once. Before anyone formed another plan, hundreds of heavy footsteps filled the corridor outside. Bangxia set down her documents and asked what kind of disagreement Tang Group had created. Tang Haili tried to call it a small misunderstanding, hoping to preserve the negotiations until the danger passed. The office door exploded inward before he finished the explanation. Su Chonglong entered through broken wood and dust with Long Dragon men packed behind him. He crossed the room, grabbed Tang Yun by the collar, and lifted him from the floor. Tang Yun could barely breathe as the Dragon Lord demanded to know why he had created a deep fake involving Su Chonglong and another man's wife. Only then did the designer of the scheme understand why the target had arrived in person. The fake intended to turn Lin Yen against Shudan had instead turned Su Chonglong against the Tang family. A slap inflated one side of Tang Yun's face before he could invent a defense. Another strike corrected the other side and left blood at his mouth. Tang Haili stepped forward and tried to invoke Tang Group status and Su Bangxia's presence as protection. Su Chonglong asked who he was. When Tang Haili identified himself as Tang Yun's father, the Dragon Lord blamed the parent for raising the man who created the scheme. A kick folded Tang Haili over before Su Chonglong pulled him up and delivered a rapid sequence of slaps. The father's glasses disappeared. His nose bled, and teeth came loose while Tang Yun curled against the wall. For all their arrogance inside family meetings, neither man had any answer when the person they offended ignored polite corporate rules. Tang Yun finally crawled towards Su Bangxia and begged her to intervene. Bangxia had no personal reason to protect him, but Tang Group's destruction could affect the project she had come to negotiate. She stood and told Su Chonglong that bringing hundreds of men into a company in broad daylight was hardly an appropriate business method. The Dragon Lord's tone softened because the Su family genuinely possessed enough influence to deserve caution. He apologized for disrupting her meeting but refused to leave without explaining why he had come. Su Chonglong pointed at Tong Yun and Tong Haili and described the fabricated video. They had used his face as the male participant, Tang Shudin's face as the woman, then sent it to Lin Yen in an attempt to destroy the marriage. Bangxia's expression changed when she heard Lin Yen's name. She asked whether he meant the Lin family's real eldest son, the man who had served 5 years in prison. Su Chonglong confirmed it. Bangxia then learned a second fact she had not expected. Lin Yen was engaged to Tang Shuedin. The man who had saved her and Zixuan on the cruise had been living in Jiangbei while she searched for a way to reconnect with him. Her family had sent gifts to the Lin mansion specifically for him, yet the trail had gone cold after he left. Now she was sitting across from relatives, actively trying to ruin his new family. Bangxia turned toward Tong Yun with no warmth left in her expression. She canceled the Su family's 10 billion yuan partnership with Tang Group on the spot. The number that had made Tong Yun feel invincible disappeared in a single sentence. Tang Haili stared through swollen eyes, while his son collapsed into disbelief. Su Chonglong approved openly, saying Bangxia had avoided doing business with people who would eventually betray her as well. Then Bangxia asked a question that surprised even him. How final was Lin Yen's marriage? Su Chonglong's instincts immediately noticed the interest behind the wording. He explained that Lin Yen and Shudin had held an engagement ceremony, but had not yet completed official civil registration. Technically, there was no marriage certificate yet. Bangxia became even more attentive when Su Chonglong added a private piece of information about Lin Yen's martial ability. He called his sworn brother a great achievement internal energy master, an expert beyond anyone normally seen in Jiangbei. Bangxia understood the significance because families at her level competed fiercely for practitioners with far less power. The ex-convict she had already found mysterious was now more valuable than she had imagined. She told Su Chonglong that she wanted to work with Lin Yen directly. If he agreed, the 10 billion yuan technology project Tong Yun had just lost could be offered to Lin Yen with no hidden conditions. Su Chonglong promised to arrange an introduction. Father and son on the floor heard every word. The contract they had expected to use against Shudin had been removed from them and handed toward the very man they tried to provoke. Su Chonglong gave the Tang family one final warning before leaving. If he caught them scheming against his sworn brother again, next time the damage would not stop at computers and furniture. Bangxia left as well, taking her documents and the Su family's opportunity with her. The office fell quiet except for Tong Yun and Tong Haili breathing among the wreckage. Roughly half an hour later, Tang Jiangwo arrived to inspect what remained of the headquarters. He saw shattered offices, destroyed equipment, a bloodied son, and a grandson whose face barely resembled the one from that morning. Tong Yun explained the disaster by blaming Shuedin again. He still insisted her protection from Su Chonglong had to come from an affair. Tang Haili added that Lin Yen must have some improper relationship with Su Bangxia because he refused to believe merit could explain her support. The accusations let them protect their pride, but offered no useful strategy. Tang Jiangwo stood among the broken glass and promised that he would not allow Shudin to take control of so easily. The old man had lost the public humiliation, the forced marriage scheme, the 50 million challenge, the contract theft, and now the Su technology deal. Yet he treated each failure as a reason to scheme harder rather than evidence that his assumptions were wrong. Across town, Lin Yen knew nothing about the exact damage because he did not need to supervise Su Chonglong's anger personally. The message and fake video had already produced the consequence Tong Yun deserved. More importantly, Lin Yen focused on the woman and child living under the same worn roof with him. Shudin was still learning that a husband could protect her without demanding repayment. Xiaolan was still learning that calling someone daddy did not mean that person would disappear the next day. Even Li Xinru's hostility had begun to weaken whenever she watched the child laugh with Lin Yen. Those changes mattered to him more than whether Tang Group replaced its office furniture. The source of his own danger had not vanished either. The nine-dragon pure yang body remained powerful enough to become lethal whenever its internal balance broke. Shudin's natural yin energy helped enormously, especially at night when they remained physically close. The condition also explained why Lin Yen could not treat his personal life as a simple romance with ordinary biological rules. Pei Yuhan had stabilized him once. Shudin was now stabilizing him repeatedly, and he still did not know the full long-term solution. That uncertainty remained behind every joke he made about his constitution. At the same time, Shudin's recovered health had changed the way other people would look at her from that day forward. The same relatives who mocked her as a monster were already thinking about what her beauty could be used to obtain. Her restored face solved one form of abuse while creating new political and social pressure inside the Tang family. Lin Yen had therefore protected more than her appearance. He had to protect her right to decide what happened next. The 20 billion yuan Long Dragon contract gave Shudin an independent foundation far stronger than Tang Zhongwo expected. Su Bangxia's cancelled project also meant the Patriarch's branch had lost a future advantage they thought belonged to Tang Yun. For the first time, the balance inside Tang Group was beginning to shift because outside powers recognized Shudin rather than her relatives. Lin Yen's name sat at the center of that shift, even though he still slept in a cramped apartment and had no official job title. That contrast continued to confuse everyone who measured influence only through clothing, education, or public position. The Lin family had made the same mistake when they ordered him into a car trunk. Tang Jiangwo's branch was repeating it every time they called him a violent convict with no connections. Each underestimation gave Lin Yen another opening because his opponents kept building plans for a man who no longer existed. The countryside boy they abandoned had spent 5 years surrounded by masters capable of reshaping medicine, martial arts, technology, and strategy. He returned without a public resume, which made his real advantages almost impossible for ordinary families to calculate. Su Bangxia had already learned part of that truth on the cruise when he defeated armed attackers and understood her AI better than expected. Su Changsheng had learned far more after the paternity diagnosis, infertility treatment, and Yinshi Lake battle. Shudin knew the least about his power, yet she trusted him for reasons unrelated to status. She had seen him carry Xiaolan into the ballroom, heal her face, reject money, and fight when everyone else looked away. That difference was why Lin Yen guarded her trust more carefully than he guarded the corporate opportunities accumulating around him. He could replace money with a phone call. Replacing the sense of safety Shudin and Shaolin were slowly building would be much harder if he ever broke it. After the Long Dragon raid, ordinary Tang employees were left dealing with the consequences of a family conflict they never created. The attack also made Tang Jiangwo's control look weaker because everyone in the company now knew another chairman had invaded without resistance. Tang Yun's claim to be the future face of Tang Group suffered badly once employees saw him beaten in his own office. Even without a formal announcement, Shudin's successful Long Dragon relationship became harder to erase. The threat from Su Chonglong guaranteed that any attempt to replace her would now risk the entire cooperation. He picked Xiaolan up from school as promised, keeping the most important role in his new life simple and visible. The little girl came home holding his hand, with the confidence of someone who no longer had to beg strangers for a father. When Lin Yen opened the apartment door, he found Shudin preparing to go out. She was changing into a white dress with her hair gathered into a clean ponytail. Against the worn apartment around her, Shudin looked like a magazine cover that had somehow wandered into the wrong building.